Chapter 654. Technological means? If she had a choice, she would not have used the holy sword. It would be troublesome if she could not control such a powerful weapon. The young mistress went through the current technology and her own black technology in her mind, and she really thought of a way. When Luther collected Superman's cells, he used a nano-level robot. Thea thought the robot's needle was kryptonite, but later she found out that Luther used a fake kryptonite in order to not be discovered by Superman. Just like kryptonite, it could degrade Kryptonian cells, but the process was very subtle and unnoticeable. To be able to bypass Superman's supersenses and blatantly harvest cells, one had to admit that Luther was really powerful. The fake kryptonite should be able to solve Kara's current problem. It could even be used to shave Superman's beard and Fiora's hair and eyebrows. This technology was definitely not in the list of commercial acquisitions. Other than asking Luther himself, she could only look at his records. Fortunately, Thea had a good relationship with Lena Luther. She left Diana to accompany Kara and teleported to the Luther group. Lena Luther knew her intention. Of course, Thea would not say that she wanted to get her ears pierced. Her excuse was to deal with Kryptonian artificial weapons. Lena readily agreed to let her see Luther's notes. Luther was very knowledgeable and had deep knowledge in all walks of life. Thea stayed in Luther's old house for half a day before she found the composition and manufacturing process of the fake kryptonite in the vast records. She did not need modern equipment to produce it. Firestorm had the ability to create inorganic materials out of thin air. She found the fat old man and told him about Luther's notes in detail. She also consulted Berserk Wolf Rob's opinion and directly created a large piece of fake kryptonite. She returned to Paradise Island with this piece of kryptonite. This time, it finally worked. Kara successfully pierced 2 ears and flew home happily. After a busy day, Thea was too lazy to go home. She decided to stay at Paradise Island for the night. The two rode their horses around the island twice. Thea saw that Diana was in high spirits, so she happily played with her. In the end, nothing happened to them. The 2 horses were so tired that they almost fainted. They had been staying at home with Hades every day, so there was no need for them to run like this. The 2 goddesses let go of the pitiful pony and strolled through the mountains. When they reached the top of the mountain, they happened to see the slowly descending sun. I really envy Kara. She's so carefree. She's so happy. The afterglow shone on the Valkyrie's face, accentuating her perfect cheeks and sharp nose. For a moment, she seemed to be enveloped by a sense of divinity. Thea didn't say anything. Instead, she sat on the ground. Diana also sat down. The 2 of them leaned closely together. You seem to be in a bit of a rush recently. I haven't seen this kind of emotion from you in a long time. Diana turned her face and looked into her lover's eyes. Thea did not mention that she suddenly felt a sense of crisis because of the King of Tears. She wasn't strong enough. So what if she was the King of Earth? It was just a matter of a finger in front of the real big shots. Especially since she had sacrificed so much for this world. There were so many people who had ties with her. At first, she might have been able to run if she couldn't win. Now, could she still run? Even if she could run, how many people could she take with her? The Martian hunter was a good example. Although he didn't say it, Thea knew that he had always regretted that he didn't have the ability to save his people. In the face of a real catastrophe, how much stronger could she be compared to him? However, these words were not suitable for Diana to hear. The warrior god required more confidence. If Diana knew that there were so many big shots above her, it would be difficult for her to take another step forward. After thinking about it, she gave a reason. I've told you about the new Creator Star and the Apocalypse Star, right? Recently, both sides have been preparing intensely. The war could start at any time. This war might decide the ultimate fate of the multiverse. This topic was also very heavy. However, the war between good and evil was very much in line with Diana's wishes. She would not stop her lover from participating in such a war. She even hated herself for not reaching the final step. She had worked very hard and felt that she was only a step away. Don't give yourself pressure. There aren't many people in this universe who are stronger than you, right? I'm confident in you. Diana said with a smile at the corner of her mouth. Indeed, there aren't many who are stronger than me. Thea said energetically. Looking at Diana's red lips under the sunset, they were bright and dazzling. She couldn't help but kiss them. After staying on Paradise Island for 2 days, Thea felt that there was no need to give herself too much pressure. She had already reached the top of the world. If she was still as scared as a quail, how could an ordinary person live? She tried to reduce her working hours and increase her leisure time. This was her way to relieve her pressure. Following comics was a good method she had found during this period of time. Many comics artists had already made the story of her and Diana vivid and vivid. The content was evil, and the style was bold. Even she, the subject of the story, was overwhelmed with emotions. On this day, while she was following the latest issue of the comic, the secretary walked in steadily. She hurriedly closed the website and pretended to be very serious. An unknown person sent a USB flash drive. My computer knowledge can't decipher the password, Miss Maisie said as she handed her a USB flash drive. Thea's attention was attracted. Miss Maisie had been by Luther's side for many years and could be considered a talent in various fields. There were not many things that she could not decipher. She inserted the USB flash drive into her computer and activated the artificial intelligence to crack it. The secretary casually reported her work and walked out calmly. Even with Gideon's strong abilities, it took him 3 minutes to crack the password on the USB flash drive. When she entered the USB flash drive, there was only a video file parked there. Seeing that Gideon did not send out an alarm signal, she opened the file directly. Harrison Wales, or rather, Reverse Lightning's thin face appeared in the video. Dr. Quinn's technology is really commendable. This encryption is a technology from 500 years later. Your world is really scary. From the beginning to the end, I only have one goal, and that is to go home. When you see this video, I'm most likely no longer in this world. Oh no, I won't die. Reverse Lightning waved gently at the camera. I found the way home, but I want to say that I've been really happy in the 15 years I've been here. Reverse Lightning took off his glasses and rubbed his forehead. I hope you can help me pass the following video to Barry at the appropriate time. Hello, Barry. When you see this video, I'm probably no longer here, no longer in your world. As for whether I'm going home or going to another parallel universe, I can't say for sure. 15 years, I've silently watched you grow from a teenager to a young man. Although you'll hate me for killing your mother, I feel. Reverse Lightning was very uncertain when he said this. Chapter 655. In the end, Reverse Lightning didn't say what he didn't understand, so he vaguely missed the topic. Barry, we're not really enemies. I'm sorry about what happened to your mother. I'm here to give you what you need the most. Hand over what I'm about to say to the police. After Reverse Lightning finished speaking, he sat up straight and looked straight at the camera. My name is Harrison Wales. My mind is intact and my body is healthy. I admit that on the night of March 18, 2000, I killed Nora Allen. I stabbed her chest with a dagger. Following that, Reverse Lightning described the events of that night, excluding the part about the power of speed, the time, the location, and the murder weapon. He described it as a normal murder case. Although this video couldn't bring Barry's mother back to life, it could clear Barry's father's name. It could be said that it was his final gift. Thea didn't hesitate and called the Advanced Technology Laboratory. What? Barry isn't here? Caitlin isn't here either? Psyker, who answered the phone, gave her a piece of bad news. When she asked further, she found out that the two had disappeared for 2 days and 3 nights. Psyker was now looking for them on the national network. Thea thought for a moment and still teleported to Central City. In this time, Barry was still young, but Caitlin was no longer a rookie under the training of Death Knell, Fiora, and the others. Whether it was fighting ability or superpower, she was steadily above average. Eliminating the possibility of them eloping, it was most likely that they ran into some big trouble and didn't even send a message back. Caitlin also had a light ring, but the light ring's call was like a stone sinking into the sea. There were only 2 explanations. She was either dead or had left this universe. Considering that Reverse Lightning had found a way to leave this world, these 2 couldn't have followed Reverse Lightning and then transmigrated, right? When Thea found Psyker, her thoughts were confirmed. The Lightning Squad discovered Reverse Lightning's whereabouts 3 days ago. Although Psyker swore that he was good at searching, Thea felt that Reverse Lightning's mind wasn't clear after recording the video, so he purposely exposed his tracks. It was supposed to be a showdown between the 2 of them, but Caitlin had always believed that Thea cared about Reverse Lightning's life, so she no longer held back. Wearing her yellow light ring, she gave chase. Psyker, on the other hand, didn't have the same speed. Unfortunately, he was left at home and stayed there for 2 days until Thea came looking for him. They're most likely no longer in this universe. Find the place where they last disappeared. I'll go take a look, Thea instructed the troubled Psyker. Then, she saw Psyker looking at her with his mouth wide open. Really? Are you sure there's a parallel space? Yes. Thea didn't say anything in her heart. Jean Boisisco Ramon, when your superpower awakens, you can even travel through parallel universes as you wish. She did not know when this idiot superpower would awaken, and there was no need to wait. The Mother Box could travel through all the parallel timelines, and Zeus Lightning Arrow could traverse the timelines. Thea's current means were extremely plentiful. As long as someone was still alive, she could find them. How do you need to get there? I mean, you can travel through parallel universes? Psyker looked at her with a curious expression. How would Miss Thea know how the Mother Box worked? The technological level of the new Creator Star and Apocalypse Star was countless years ahead of Earth. Batman even used steel bones. He had never heard of anyone who had researched and understood this thing. Psyker did not speak with a straight face. Only then did he remember that his good friend Barry and his big sister Caitlin were still missing. He patted his head and began to check their last traces. New Jersey. It's 35 kilometers from Pennsylvania in New Jersey. That's where the tracker in Barry's suit disappeared. When Thea confirmed the location and prepared to observe the scene, she saw Psyker staring at her with an aura that said, "If you don't take me there, I'll kill myself here." Miss Thea took a closer look. The cells in Psyker's body were extremely active. As long as there was a little stimulation from the outside world, he would break through his original shackles. It could be said that he was only one step away from becoming a shockwave. However, she could not explain this to him, so she changed her words. "I have a feeling that if you come with me, this journey will be very exciting for you. However, your previous life will completely leave you. Are you prepared?" Choice. Another choice. Giving others a choice was such a wonderful thing. Psyker did not understand the deeper meaning behind her words. He found it funny and said, "There will be danger? Traveling through parallel universes will turn me into a different life form?" No, you're completely wrong. You have the potential to become a superhero. Do you know Psyker Ramon? Your cells are very active now, and you're only one step away from complete formation. A little stimulation from the outside world, perhaps a bullet or a speeding car, will bring a new world to your eyes. Are you prepared for this? Psyker wanted to say yes. In this day and age, other than people like Batman and Shiva, who would say no to superpowers? However, he understood his own feelings. He was far from prepared. Just a second before Thea was about to activate the teleportation, he finally made up his mind. "I'm not prepared, but Barry is my brother. I have to save him." His expression and words were sincere. Thea did not say anything more. At most, she would send him back if there was any danger. She watched as he turned around to pack his things. He took a big bag of toothbrushes and tissues, and wished he could take a few tablets. "Do you think we're going out to play?" Thea threw away his messy things and handed him a pistol. Then, she dragged him along and activated the teleportation. The two of them arrived at the scene and followed the tracker's instructions. Even though it had been 2 days, the traces left behind by the lightning speed were still fresh in their minds. Occasionally, Caitlin's frost blast would be scattered all around them. Psyker raised his pistol and moved forward carefully. Seeing how careful he was, Thea wanted to laugh. However, in order to train him, she did not say that there were no enemies in a radius of a few miles. "We're here. The tracker should have reached here. The error should be about 100 meters. Psyker walked to the side of a small path and lowered his head to measure with his device for a long time before he said with certainty. After that, he stared at Thea intently. He wanted to see how the process of traveling through parallel universes worked. Thea used her heart to feel the surrounding aura. The aura was deep and powerful. She felt that it was good news. These guys did not travel through time. If she was not wrong, they had run into a parallel universe. She reached out and touched her earring. She compared the information stored in the mother box and matched the corresponding space coordinates. With a loud bang, an orange tunnel appeared in front of them. Chapter 656. Thea didn't know which part of Earth they were on. She dragged Psyker, whose mouth was wide open, and jumped in. She had planned to use her magic to protect Psyker. After all, There were no conditions set in the sonic tunnel. Theoretically, anyone could walk through it. However, even the weakest of the new gods was stronger than Psyker. She was afraid that he would explode and die. However, the outcome was gratifying. The sonic boom channel had directly facilitated Psyker's final step. His shockwave ability had completely awakened, and the sonic boom channel, which would have caused some damage to him, was now like a gentle breeze. Psyker Ramon had silently completed his metamorphosis without even realizing it. The two of them walked out of the tunnel. What greeted them was not the smiling faces of Barry and Caitlin, but several weapons spewing energy bullets. Before Psyker could react, Thea waved her hand and a light screen blocked the attack. "Who are you?" 6 or 7 men pointed their weapons at the two of them. Even though they had more people than Thea, they were still very nervous. They were all dressed in rags. Even the energy guns in their hands, the only thing that gave them courage, were about to run out of energy in Thea's eyes. She ignored these fugitives and looked around. Judging from their language, they were still on Earth. As for whether they were in the New Jersey of this universe, it was hard to tell. The cars on the side of the road were piled up messily. The roads were badly damaged, and debris could be seen everywhere. The guys in front of her had a strong smell of blood on them. It wasn't hard to tell that there was a war here. She just didn't know if it was a local war or a national one. Thea took out the light ring to contact Caitlin. Only then did she realize a serious problem. The light ring couldn't be used in this parallel universe. Without the yellow light to charge and transmit information, the light ring was a dead object. She scratched her head. She could only ask the passers-by in front of her. "Is this the United States?" The few of them remained silent. "Let me change the question. What year is it?" They suddenly looked nervous. "By the way, do you have a superhero here? Superman?" Thea realized that before she could finish her sentence, these people had turned around and ran away. This exhausted her patience. She spread her fingers, and a guy who seemed to be the leader of the group was caught by her magician's hand. "Can't I talk to you nicely and answer my question? Why do you have such a big reaction when I mention Superman?" Thea hovered in the air and looked down at the downtrodden man. The man's neck was grabbed by the hand of magic, and his limbs were trembling. He was obviously scared to death, but he still chose to keep silent. Thea, who had not used brainwashing for a long time, could only go back to her old profession. Now that she had become a god, the spell she was very familiar with was even more powerful. He tapped the man's forehead with his finger, and a large cluster of memories was quickly read. Thea frowned halfway through. There was something wrong with this world. At first, when she saw them gnashing their teeth at the mention of Superman, Thea thought that this was a superhuman world. However, after reading some of the memories, she knew that she had guessed wrong. The Superman here was still a good person, but he was invaded by the Apocalypse Star and was captured. Now, he had been transformed into the Apocalypse Devil Superman and was no longer the superhero he used to be. On the contrary, he had caused great damage to Earth. The Wasteland Wolf. The name of the Apocalypse Star's commander was well known in this world. Even these ordinary people who were far away from the war knew this name because he was the conqueror of Earth. Countless superheroes fell at his feet, and now humans could only crawl at his feet and live on his grace. The man knew very little. He only knew that Superman was captured. As for Batman, he had heard of him, but he had no idea whether this person was alive or dead. With too little information, he could not analyze anything. Thea let the man go. The man quickly recovered from his dazed state. As if he had seen a ghost, he threw down the energy gun and stumbled into the distance. It's a pity that the Croydon compass is still in Barry's hands. "Can you use the current methods to track Barry?" she asked Psyker. Psyker did not know that he had awakened a superpower. His face was pale at the moment, but when he thought of his good friend's whereabouts, he forced himself to be alert. He turned on the tablet and tried to connect. Soon, he shook his head and said with a little frustration, "I can't connect to the network here. Their code is different from ours." How troublesome. Thea felt a little sad about reverse lightning. Everything was different in a new environment, and she had to adapt again. Fortunately, she was not reverse lightning who had lost all her speed. Finding someone was not a problem for her. Divination was an important subject in both ancient and modern magic. Even if she had become a god, her attainments in divination were not as good as Madame Xanadu's. However, this did not mean that she did not know how to do it. It was just that she was not good at it. Under Psyker's confused gaze, she quickly drew a magic circle. After thinking for a while, she made a small figure of Barry out of the mud. With her attainments in magic, she did not need to add any hair or blood. She only needed to imitate Barry's spiritual characteristics. This nameless spell, which was a combination of divination and witchcraft, was instantly activated. Then, the small figure spun around a few times and finally pointed firmly to the south. She picked up the small figure and flew Psyker to the south. Along the way, it was a tragic sight. After killing 3 batches of apocalypse demons in a row, Thea had to cast a high-level invisibility spell on the 2 of them. These apocalypse demons were quite advanced in technology. They could see through ordinary invisibility spells. What happened to this world? Was it invaded by aliens? Initially, Psyker was scared out of his wits as he flew in the air. However, perhaps he was brave, or perhaps the tragic situation on the ground attracted his attention. When the 2 of them flew past the 9th human settlement that was destroyed by the apocalypse demons, the young mistress took out her whip and killed all the soldiers. After saving a dozen survivors, he finally could not help but ask Thea. Everything is possible in a parallel world. I can only help where I can. First, find Barry. Believe me, I will make these bastards pay the price. The young mistress said firmly. Now that she was also a member of the new god tribe, it was her duty to attack the apocalypse star. It was just a Great Plains wolf. She could easily mobilize her magic army and crush him. Even the Heavenly Father might personally make a move. He had a deep-seated hatred for the Great Plains wolf for killing his wife. However, if the Heavenly Father made a move, the scale of the war would instantly expand. It was hard to say whether it was a blessing or a curse for the survivors of this planet. There's a reaction. Barry should be in this city. Thea finally got close to Barry according to the small figure's instructions. However, she slowed down. When she saw the signs by the roadside, she was still a little stunned. Chapter 657. When Psyker saw her stop halfway through her sentence, he curiously followed her gaze. His eyesight was far inferior to the young lady's, but the awakening of his superpower had greatly improved his physical fitness. After squinting his eyes for a long time, he finally understood why Thea stopped talking. A rusty iron plate covered with blood and bullet holes was lying on the side of the road with the words, 15 kilometers away from Star City, written on it. Thinking that this world also had Superman and Star City, then a lot of things must also exist, he consciously shut his mouth. If he could think of something, the young lady would naturally be more clear about it. She also had this plate in her original world. The style of the plate and the font were exactly the same, making Thea feel that she had returned to her hometown. She laughed at herself and shook her head gently to get rid of this thought. This could not be her home. Her home was not here. It was just that the prosperous Star City in her impression overlapped with the dead city in front of her. She still felt a kind of anger that reached the depths of her soul. How many acquaintances of Star City were still alive in this world? Although those people theoretically had nothing to do with her, when she thought of Moira, Oliver, and even herself lying in a pool of blood here, she still could not be indifferent. Although she could not control her anger to the extent that she could use it casually, it was still a small achievement. Countless light red cyclones lingered around her body. Thea hurriedly withdrew her emotions, but a thought still formed in her mind. The wasteland wolves must die. The place that should be a holiday square in her impression was now full of corpses. There were apocalyptic demons, but more ordinary citizens. No matter how rich or poor they were before, they were a group of pitiful humans in front of the enemy. The streets and alleys were full of chaos and depression. The city had been completely abandoned. Without using her supervision, she could sense that there were less than 100 survivors in the entire city. Psyker Ramon, do you regret coming here? At this time, Psyker was more agitated than she was. His lips were trembling. The tragic scene in front of him was really too different from his original idea. He usually only needed to hide behind the screen and watch Barry beat down the enemy. He did not experience any danger at all. He even had the leisure to give the enemy nicknames. This was too much of a joke in Thea's opinion. Now, facing the bloody situation, his beliefs were completely shaken. Superheroes not only bore the burden of glory, but also the burden in their hearts. Did he regret it? To be honest, Psyker didn't have as strong a conviction as Barry. He joined the Lightning Squad because he wanted to display his personal worth and not because he wanted to help others. This guy's neutral attribute was far greater than his righteous attribute. The reason he was able to get to where he was today was because of friendship. I have no regrets. With a bitter face to show that he is strong, Thea can only shake her head and sigh. This kid still has a long way to go before he becomes a superhero. She takes out the little man and continues to track Barry. The good news was that Barry didn't move from his position. The bad news was that he was hiding in an underground building. The building that was covered with a layer of lead seriously blocked her view. Psyker gripped his gun tightly and walked forward cautiously. Thea sensed that something was wrong and reached out to stop him. Immediately after, a sharp arrow pierced the ground 2 steps in front of his feet. Wow! Even though the other party didn't use any underhanded means and was clearly warning him, Psyker was still taken aback. This was the first time he had come so close to death. He quickly turned his head to look at Missy. He had a superhero that could move mountains and seas by his side. He wasn't afraid. However, his heart sank when he saw Thea staring at the man in black who jumped out from the opposite wall. The other party had his bow and arrow aimed at the two of them. He didn't know why Missy was in a daze. Psyker quickly raised his gun. It didn't matter if it was useful or not. This was the only thing he could rely on. Fortunately, at the crucial moment, his good brother Barry came out. Psyker never felt that the yellow lightning was so familiar. That guy. He pointed at the man in black and asked Barry. Barry waved his hand to signal him to stop talking. Barry, who are they? The man in black's voice was old and tired. However, his hand was steady and the arrow was aimed at the two of them. The Flash was a little embarrassed as he pointed at Psyker. This is my friend Psyker Ramon. We are together with Caitlin. As for this, he looked at Thea and didn't know what to say. I am Thea Quinn from another parallel universe. Hello. Robert Quinn. It would be a lie to say that Missy was emotionally stable. After all, she was still a little dazed when she saw a relative who had died 8 years ago standing in front of her. Fortunately, she was mentally prepared and quickly accepted the fact that the old man in front of her had nothing to do with her. The man in black was naturally old Robert of this world. He had met Barry and Caitlin before, and he had doubtfully learned about the parallel universe. Now that he had met his daughter from another universe, his emotions were no longer as calm as they were before. His voice trembled as he tried to pull the bowstring. Do you have any evidence? Thea didn't know whether to laugh or cry. What evidence could she take out? They were from 2 different universes. Their experiences were definitely different. Hey, trust me. She is indeed Robert Quinn's daughter in our universe. She is not an enemy. Little Flash quickly came to smooth things over. Thanks to his gentle aura and sunny image, old Robert put down his bow and arrow. A daughter from a parallel universe? Ridiculous. Old Robert walked out slowly. Thea couldn't help but give him a sidelong glance. Green robe, black eye patch, white beard, bow and arrow on his back. This was Green Arrow's outfit. As if sensing her confusion, Little Flash quickly explained for her. In this universe, Oliver died in a shipwreck. The current Green Arrow is old Robert. Wow. Psyker was just about to exclaim when Flash covered his mouth. It was best to just brush this matter aside and pretend that they didn't hear anything. Don't worry about me. This isn't my universe. Thea emphasized again. It was both for them and for herself. This isn't the place to talk. Let's go to our place. Old Robert kept looking at Thea's appearance. Although he could still see the outline of her face, the details were 100 times more exquisite than Thea's in this universe. Even though he was already past the age of appreciating beautiful women, he still felt that this Thea was unbelievably beautiful. She's not my daughter. When he saw Thea rise into the air without any equipment, this thought became even stronger. With Little Flash carrying Psyker, the 4 of them moved quickly. In an abandoned house, a hidden door opened and they went underground. The underground space wasn't big. There were only a few resting rooms. Food and medicine were piled up messily on the ground. There was also a faint smell of blood and chemicals in the air. Chapter 658. Psyker, Thea. Without the help of the lantern ring, Caitlin could control the ice to glide through the air, but it wasn't as fast. She was waiting anxiously in the room. Seeing that they were safe, she hurriedly hugged them both. It seemed that their voices were a little loud. 2 people walked out of the room, a man and a woman. The man was in his 50s and was very thin. He had a serious expression and wore black-rimmed glasses. The woman was a little chubby and looked like she was in her 20s. The woman seemed to be very concerned about her image. Even if she was forced to hide in the basement, she still did her best to tidy herself up. Syker, who was hugging Caitlin, saw them from the corner of his eyes. He was shocked and hurriedly went to grab his weapon. Syker, don't be rash. He's not the person you remember. Caitlin hurriedly pulled Syker back. The commotion attracted the attention of Thea and old Robert, who looked gloomy on the other side. Even Thea was a little surprised. Harrison Wales? Or reverse lightning? Gray air swirled around his palm and he was ready to cast a super large area deceleration spell. No, Thea. He's not the person you remember. He's the Harrison of this time and space. Little Lightning's expression was very bad, but he still stopped Thea. The young mistress looked carefully. There was indeed no divine speed reaction in his body. He didn't even have normal energy, let alone divine speed. He was just an ordinary person. Everyone's here. Let me introduce you. Little Lightning glanced at Caitlin. The current Caitlin was more human than the Frost Killer in the original time and space, but that was only for people who were familiar with her. He could only take on the task of introducing them. This is Syker Ramon, my good brother. This is Thea Quinn, a superhero in our world. Little Lightning glanced at old Robert's expression and added, she's the daughter of the president of our world. The president of our world is Ms. Moira Quinn. Little Flash racked his brains and tried to explain with simple and plain words. Fortunately, the people in the room were smart enough to understand. Only old Robert murmured, Moira. Then, Barry introduced the people in the current spacetime. First, it was the white-haired old Robert who took off his hood. Uncle Robert Quinn. In this spacetime, he is the Green Arrow. The father and daughter over there are Dr. Harrison Wales and his daughter, Jessie Wales. Thea rubbed her forehead. To be honest, she didn't like this world. Everything here was contrary to her inherent values. The only thing she could do was to mobilize an army to cut down the wasteland wolves, then chop them up and feed them to the dogs. However, in such a large-scale battle, it was impossible not to harm the innocent. This was also the reason why she couldn't make up her mind. Seeing that Barry still wanted to talk about the current situation, she raised her hand and interrupted the conversation. Barry, Caitlin, where is Reverse Lightning? If you are done with your tracking, I will bring you back. You shouldn't be too involved with the parallel spacetime. At the mention of Reverse Lightning, Barry glanced at Caitlin. He seemed to be in low spirits. Of course, ever since Sia saw him 10 minutes ago, he had been in low spirits. The world was full of despair. The decadence in the air and the rivers on the ground made him very unhappy. I saw it with my own eyes. Reverse Lightning was killed by another extreme speed. The superhero of the spacetime called that person Extreme Speed. Although he had avenged his mother, Barry wasn't happy at all. Instead, he was filled with deep sadness. Especially when he thought of Reverse Lightning dying in front of him, the calmness and relief on his face before he died made him feel uncomfortable. Reverse Lightning was dead? Thea glanced at Caitlin. Caitlin nodded lightly to confirm the information. I can't go back. Extreme Speed's goal is to kill all the Extreme Speed. He is my enemy. I have to kill him here. Barry's answer was very similar to a superhero's. That was to kill whoever he saw. Thea felt that he was most likely doing the same. He didn't feel bad if someone else destroyed him. Instead of allowing Extreme Speed to peep around and cause trouble, it was better to kill him on this earth. But my speed is far inferior to his. Extreme Speed has absorbed the power of Extreme Speed from several parallel spacetime Extreme Speed. Now that he has obtained Reverse Lightning's part, he has far surpassed me. Barry said, a little depressed. Thea thought for a while. That's easy. We can. Before she could finish, a loud bang was heard. Old Robert slammed the table fiercely and looked at Thea fiercely. You are not my daughter. My daughter will not ignore the tragedy in front of her to discuss how to deal with Extreme Speed. You are just a stranger who looks like her. Thea took a deep breath. She was extremely upset. Waves of aura overflowed from her body. The surrounding temperature dropped rapidly. The liquid in the container began to tremble slightly. The air seemed to have solidified. She was really wronged. Everything had to be done one by one. What was wrong with dealing with Extreme Speed first? She had no responsibility or obligation to this place. Why did Robert have to impose his will on her? I don't need anyone to tell me what to do. You're not my father either. He's kind and considerate of others. You just look like him. You're not him at all. The two of them were at loggerheads. Neither of them was willing to admit defeat. Don't fight. We can discuss. We don't have to deal with extreme speed. Little Flash saw that they were at daggers drawn because of him and hurriedly came out to smooth things over. Barry, you don't understand. I can feel that this old man is hostile to me. This hostility has been there since we met. Thea's understanding of emotions was unparalleled. Now that she was serious, she immediately noticed the abnormality. Barry listened and immediately stood beside Thea. If the other party was hostile, then there was nothing to talk about. He was ruthlessly played by reverse lightning. At this moment, Barry was weak and sensitive. He hated being lied to the most. Caitlin was even more so. Her palms were already filled with frost. She was ready to start a massacre here. The sudden change in the situation made Harrison and his daughter, who had been watching the show, a little confused. Are you guys so hot-tempered? Ignoring his weak body, he stood in front of them and signaled for them to stop. My feelings can't be wrong, Mr. Robert Quinn. Thea really wanted to understand where this hatred came from. Could it be that he knew that she was Old Ma's daughter in this world? The probability was not small. She could handle it calmly in the original timeline, but it was hard to say in this timeline. Old Robert hesitated for a long time. It was only when Harrison desperately signaled him with his eyes that he reluctantly said, "You are not my daughter at all. I noticed at first glance. You look exactly like the person who killed my daughter." Chapter 659. Thea heaved a sigh of relief when she heard that it was not an illegitimate daughter. As long as it was not an illegitimate daughter, she was confident that she could solve any problem. However, Old Robert's words confused her. What did he mean? Someone who looked like her killed the Thea of this time and space? Was it someone from the Wasteland Wolves? The first thing that came to her mind was a spell. Her image must have been transmitted to the Apocalypse Star. Did the other party use a spell to kill someone using her appearance? This was the only answer that Thea could think of. Old Robert stared at Thea with bright eyes, not letting go of even the slightest change in her. He shook his head with certainty. It was a year before the Wasteland Wolves came to Earth. That woman looked exactly like you. Thea's friends looked at each other. Barry understood. It should be someone from the parallel universe. Now that there are two parallel universes, it is normal to have one more. This answer could be deduced by anyone with a normal IQ. This was also the reason why Old Robert did not make a move. He nodded. You are right. There is a third parallel universe. However, can Thea of that universe be as beautiful as her? That Thea can fly, release a kind of energy shockwave, hold a long sword, and have the same hairstyle as her. Old Robert spoke with certainty. With so much evidence, Barry Sisko was a little hesitant. It was really difficult to have such a beautiful face. If Sia's current appearance was placed in the ancient times, she would be able to get tens of thousands of rough men to fight for her without using magic. Caitlin was also a little suspicious. Thea's secret power was not small. She was a part of it. Could it be that she was the one who killed the people? She began to secretly gather energy in her hands. If she failed, she would first freeze Barry's legs. Thea herself found it unbelievable. However, she insisted that it was some kind of illusion that bewitched these ordinary people. With a flick of her finger, a human figure as tall as her appeared beside her. To increase the recognition, she even made the illusion wear a big quilt and a holy sword. Is it this image? Robert shook his head. She then created an image wearing a long robe and holding a soft whip. If the Apocalypse Star used her image to do bad things, this image was the most likely. That's what it looks like? Robert Sr. continued to shake his head, indicating no. This time, they realized that there was a problem. What did that person look like? Barry asked the question that was on everyone's minds. Old Robert began to describe with an ugly expression. She looks exactly the same as you. You both have blonde hair, but the color of your eyes is different. That woman has amber eyes. But his temperament was very cold, and he looked at us without any emotion, as if he was looking at ants. Looking at the image of Thea holding a holy sword, he had a look of disgust on his face. Her armor is similar to this one, but her armor is black. The sword in her hand is so black that it seems to be able to absorb light. There are blood-red inscriptions on the sword. I saw her plunge her sword into Thea's chest with my own eyes. After that, the sword emitted a thick red light. After that, her armor seemed to have absorbed Thea's blood, and there were many bright red lines on it. After that, the woman looked at me coldly and turned to leave. The room was silent. Everyone was a little confused, including Barry and Psyker, who had known Thea for many years. They were all confused because Thea had always been like a cloud of fog. No one could tell what her specific ability was. How did she obtain her power? No one knew. Could it be that she obtained her power by slaughtering her parallel selves? I'm so angry. This was utter nonsense. There can't be anyone like me. Of course, Thea saw their confused expressions. If I'm not wrong, this woman should be a dark Thea. She's not me and I'm not her. Thea was too lazy to explain the uniqueness of the goddess of wealth and trade to them. There might be a few Thea Quinn, but there was only one goddess of wealth and trade. Since we've come to this point, I'll tell you the truth. This earth will not be ignored. The Wasteland Wolf and I are both members of the new god race. He represents the evil side, and I represent the righteous side. My army can head to this universe at any time. There's only one Great Plains wolf, and there's only one me. Shocked by her resolute words, everyone's expressions became better. Of course, this might be because they heard that there were reinforcements. Thea had thought a lot. She didn't expect to receive such news when she came to look for Barry. There was a dark Thea Quinn in the multiverse. According to Robert's description, her weapon was similar to a holy sword. There was no possibility of a new god. All the new gods in the universe were in the new Creation Star and Revelation Star. Every time a new god was born, they would be recruited. However, the path to becoming stronger in this multiverse was not limited to the new gods. Not to mention others, once Zeus returned to his main body, he would be able to beat up the new gods apart from Uncle Da. Even existences like the 3 palace demons could fight Uncle Da head-on. It was hard to guess what the dark Thea had up her sleeves. Thea could only be sure of one thing. She didn't have the advantage of foresight. There were 52 parallel universes. It was impossible for 52 transmigrators to fall from 52 parallel universes, right? There was only one transmigrator who fused with her. The other party must have come this far without knowing anything about the world. Amazing. As expected, the dark state was 5 times stronger. She had spent so much effort to reach her current level. She was probably 100 times more hardworking than she was. In order to strengthen their impression, Thea took out the holy sword. Everyone was bathed in the warm fragrance of the holy sword. See, this is my sword. I don't know if there are any stories about King Arthur in your world, but this is the legendary Sword of the Lake. It turned out that this world wasn't much different from their original time and space. There was Christmas and King Arthur. Such a positive atmosphere couldn't be faked. Robert finally let down his guard. Thea asked about Robert's family in this time and space. After listening to his story, she was a little sad. Oliver didn't have any talent and died in a shipwreck. Old Luo went through a lot of hardships and learned a lot of skills before returning to Star City. The first one to bear the brunt was Malcolm. The 2 friends started a battle of life and death. In the final stage, Moira blocked Malcolm's arrow, and old Marco was shot to death by old Luo. Lying in her husband's arms, Moira redeemed herself and closed her eyes with a smile. Thea here didn't have the help of a transmigrator. It was still version 1.0. She skipped school and drank too much. Old Luo took care of his daughter. He managed the company during the day and fought criminals at night. After 2 years, he finally changed Thea's bad habits. Unfortunately, he was stabbed to death by the dark Thea from another world. Chapter 660. After the sadness, old Robert buried his beloved daughter and left Quinn's old house where his wife and daughter were in eternal rest. He guarded Star City alone for 2 years until the Wasteland Wolf arrived on Earth. Great. The young mistress was speechless. Her acquaintances from that space-time were all dead here, one after another. Other than you, are there any other superheroes in this world? Are they? Psyker couldn't help but ask. When this question was brought up, everyone in this time and space was in low spirits. Seeing that the 2 old men were unwilling to answer, Dr. Harrison's daughter, Thea looked a little chubby. Jesse Wales answered, Batman, Superman, and Wonder Woman are our strongest heroes here. You have Wonder Woman here too? Thea's curiosity was instantly piqued. Jessie looked at her carefully. The Wasteland Wolf used a device to control the humans of the world. Batman sacrificed himself to blow up the enemy's command tower and control center, saving everyone. However, the price was still too high for humans to bear. Superman was captured, Batman sacrificed himself, and I heard that Wonder Woman was killed by the Wasteland Wolf's sneak attack. The superheroes that protected the human world are no longer here. Whoosh! The temperature in the room had already returned to normal, but now it was visible to the naked eye that the temperature in the room had dropped by a lot. Thea asked in disbelief, "What's the name of your Wonder Woman here?" Jesse looked at his father and then at old Robert. The three of them shook their heads to show that they didn't know. Is it like this? Thea transformed into Diana, dressed in the same beginner god costume. Jessie was just about to nod when Barry quickly ran to Missy's side to comfort her. Your wife is living well at home. This has nothing to do with you, right? Even though Thea understood this, she still felt unhappy. Extremely unhappy. That bastard Wasteland Wolf, he actually killed Diana in this time and space. If I don't chop him into pieces, I won't be able to vent the hatred in my heart. He took a few deep breaths and tried his best to clear his mind before continuing to ask, "Then, who is your current superhero leader?" Jessie didn't know the answer to this question. Old Luo said tiredly, "It's still Batman. It's just that the current Batman is his father, an old man who's even older than me. For his son, he put on his armor again." Sigh. Thea was actually a little sad to hear about Batman's death. Although he didn't have superpowers, from any point of view, Batman was enough to be called a great superhero. As a human, he did the best he could. Superman had been captured and turned into an enemy. Diana and Batman had both died in battle. No wonder the world was so miserable. Are there no other heroes other than Batman? Thea did not expect much from old Batman. His son could cheat, but he himself might not have the ability. Moreover, according to old Luo, old Batman was older than him. Wasn't he almost 70 years old? Jessie Fatter, this young lady whose original name was Jessie Wales, when she introduced herself, she said that her friends called her Jessie. Quick guessed. The young lady didn't see where she was, so perhaps it was more appropriate to call her Fatter. Of course, this Fatter was Sia's inner respect for her. This young lady wasn't too fat, just that her face was big, and her body was very well proportioned, with an extra layer of meat compared to ordinary people. The lady's face glowed as if she had mentioned her idol. She said excitedly, Hawkgirl is now the representative of the superheroes in our world." After the fat lady finished speaking, she glanced at Thea and Barry. She was a little surprised when she found that they were normal. "Hawkgirl doesn't exist in your world?" Barry directly said that he had never heard of it. Thea scratched her head. Horus was killed by her, so Hawkman and Hawkgirl should no longer exist. However, this was in her world and her timeline. The fusion of new gods was unique, but the old gods, especially the gods of faith, had different laws. There might be gods with the same name and divine title. Therefore, it was not surprising that there was a Hawkgirl in this time and space. However, Hawkgirl was actually the strongest superheroes in this world. This was simply a tragedy. That poor little bird that only knew how to swing a hammer. Thea felt that she could beat her when she was still skateboarding. Now that such a character was carrying the burden, it was no wonder that this world was filled with despair. Jessie also introduced a few human superpowers who resisted the tyranny of the Wasteland Wolf. There was Sandman, Iron Captain, Atom Smasher, Dr. Light. They were all half black and half white characters. The main reason they rose up in revolt was that the Wasteland Wolf did not give them a way out. The situation was not optimistic. If they wanted to rely solely on these heroes of Earth to save this world that Thea named Earth 2 in her heart, unless a miracle happened. She felt that she was the representative of this miracle. "Barry, here you go." She suddenly remembered the USB flash drive that Reverse Lightning had given her. Although he was dead, she should still let Barry take a look. The coding of this Earth was slightly different from that of their original Earth. Fortunately, Dr. Harrison was still an amazing scientist. He fiddled with it for a while and read the information of their original Earth. It was a magical feeling to see someone who looked exactly like her talking on the screen. Barry was only left with shock. He did not expect Reverse Lightning to leave this video behind. Other things aside, at least his father could be cleared of his crimes and stand in the light of day again. Although Thea had secretly pushed for his father to be released for medical treatment, Barry was still very excited to be cleared of all his crimes. Psyker did not know how to persuade his good brother. The few of them had complicated feelings towards Reverse Lightning. They had trusted him so much before, but he had betrayed them and now he was dead. However, when they looked back, they did not know what to do. "Do you want me to send you back to deal with your father's matter first?" Thea felt that Barry's condition was very bad. He would not be able to provide much help in the upcoming army-level battle. However, just as she finished speaking, a low voice sounded around them. "He's not going anywhere. Become my speed." A figure mixed with blue lightning approached quickly. The air was compressed violently as it carried irresistible kinetic energy. The enemy's target was Barry. Was this extreme speed? His speed was so fast that even Thea could not keep up with his movements. This guy's speed surpassed all the people and gods she had ever seen. Even Barry, the son of extreme speed, was not his opponent. However, attacking the enemy's weakness and pulling the opponent down to your level before defeating him was the value of magic. Time stop. Thea crushed the gem she carried with her and released a stored time stop. In the relative time stop, the difference between extreme speed and Barry could be seen. Barry's movements were very stiff. He could barely maintain a running movement. However, extreme speed was able to maintain a relatively high speed movement. The difference between the two of them seemed to be a few levels. Sensing his own abnormality, extreme speed, who was wearing a black leather suit, turned his head to look at Thea. "What are you looking at?" Ever since she came to this world, she had never been in a good mood. A truck full of acquaintances had died and there was also a dark Thea causing trouble in the multiverse. No matter how she thought about it, she could not be happy. Now that there was a guy who was not afraid of death looking for a beating, she would send him on his way. Slap! She raised her soft whip and used the silver fire that was as bright as the stars. The tip of the whip brought out a little bit of meteors that danced around. Now, her silver fire was no longer a pure magic fire. Referring to the fire that she got from Poseidon, she added the fire of the water into the magic fire. The small flame collected by the goddess of the ocean, Amphitrite, spent a long time in the deepest part of the ocean and gradually accumulated it bit by bit. Chapter 661. Thea didn't understand the principle of fire in water. She could only explain it according to the indescribable theory of yin and yang conversion. Poseidon didn't like fire, even if the fire was produced in the sea. Thea, on the other hand, felt that it was a treasure. It could change from one extreme to another, which was very valuable for research. The light blue flames dancing in the sky were the result of her preliminary research. Originally, the silver flames could only burn things with energy. Now the new flames could burn everything, and the water in the target's body could increase the intensity of the flames. Amidst the overflowing flames, there were also countless whip shadows. The wind pressure that was originally caused by the extreme speed of the whip changed, and the air became extremely hot and unbearable. The paper on the table began to emit crisp sounds, accompanied by fine smoke that ignited. Extreme Speed looked at the flames in his sight. The few people in the room were still in a state of stillness. The flames reflected their red faces. His intuition told him that he couldn't take it head-on. Even if he was in the range of time stop, he could still maintain a relatively high speed. With his agile figure and still swift speed, he was confident that he could get rid of Thea, and then reap the harvest of the extreme speed from another time and space. However, he underestimated Thea, or rather, he believed too much in what he saw with his eyes. Confusion. This was the characteristic of her divine power that Thea had discovered long ago. She mixed a lot of illusions in the air. That day, even Apollo was fooled by her, let alone the extreme speed of a mortal. After hitting 3 flames in the air, Extreme Speed realized that something was wrong. The initial temperature of the flames was not high, but there was a tendency to burn more and more. Whether it was slapping or wind pressure, it was ineffective against the flames. Instead, with his movements, the flames showed signs of expanding. What the hell? In the time that Extreme Speed was stunned, Thea's whip was already in front of him. This guy had 10 times more combat experience than Barry. He turned around and ran for more than 10 miles in one breath. Thea's magic range was not so large, and Extreme Speed soon found that he had recovered his original speed. Unfortunately, the flames on his body showed no signs of extinguishing. Extreme Speed's eyes changed slightly, and his body shook violently. A blue light flashed, and he ran directly through the thick wall at high speed. Amazing! Thea couldn't help but sigh. This guy had made the already buggy lightning speed even more buggy. Using its own vibration characteristics, it achieved a kind of atomic resonance with the wall, and then passed through it. His own flames definitely couldn't follow the vibrations, so he left them on the wall. The principle behind this move wasn't difficult, but finding the frequency of the wall's vibrations and making his body resonate with it required a lot of time and experimentation. Thea put away her time stop and teleported them out of the basement. The cramped environment restricted the other party, but it also restricted her. "Caitlin!" she shouted. Frost Killer, who could be considered to have been trained for a long time, immediately activated a large spell around them. The heat within a radius of 100 meters was completely absorbed, and the temperature plummeted. This move was both offensive and defensive. It had been effective against reverse lightning back then, and it would be effective against extreme speed today as well. Caitlin had just unleashed her ultimate move when she was already in front of him from miles away. As soon as he entered the range of 100 meters, Extreme Speed's body began to lose heat rapidly, which greatly reduced his speed. Unwilling to give up, he once again widened the distance and rushed over from another angle. The result was disappointing. Caitlin's move was actually quite stupid, but he really didn't have a good way to break it. The freezing effect on Extreme Speed was too fatal. Even if he was the fastest in the world, he couldn't break through in a short time. The Flash. Your speed is mine. After a few consecutive attempts, Extreme Speed knew that he would most likely return empty-handed today. His mouth was useless, but he still wanted to use a wave of words. Barry was just about to reply when Thea stopped him. Physics. Magic can't be resisted like that. 5 fingers spread out, aiming at Extreme Speed from afar, Thea softly spat out a syllable. Internal explosion. So what if Extreme Speed could shake off his flames? Magic was controlled by spiritual power, and it had directional properties. Temporarily changing the atomic structure could shake off the magic, but unless he maintained the resonance frequency of the wall forever, once he returned to his original state, the magic would entangle him like gangrene attached to the bone. Some wizards' curses could last for thousands of years with the bloodline. Now that Thea had hurriedly cast the spell, it didn't need to last that long, but it could still last for dozens of minutes. If Extreme Speed disappeared without a trace, his spiritual power wouldn't be able to detect it, and there would be nothing he could do. But Extreme Speed stopped and wanted to use his mouth to escape. How could Lady Caitlin let him run away after showing off? Relying on the connection of spiritual power, Thea directly transformed the contaminated water in Extreme Speed's body. A small ball of fire was born in his body, and then it was directly detonated by Thea. Extreme Speed could also be injured, and his internal organs were not much stronger than ordinary people. Extreme Speed was shocked when he felt the abnormality in his chest and lungs. He didn't have time to think carefully and turned around to run. In less than 1,000th of a second, an explosion occurred in his body. Although he had run more than 10 miles away, a bloody hole was blown out from his liver to his kidney to his entire abdomen. The explosion happened too suddenly and too strangely. Extreme Speed was not prepared at all, and he started to bleed profusely. He could no longer maintain his high speed and stumbled to the side of the road, vomiting mouthfuls of blood. His chest and abdomen were badly mutilated, and his special anti-wear suit was blown open. Blood flowed freely from the wound, and the whole ground was completely dyed red. Kill him quickly. He's an accomplice of the Great Plains Wolves. Dr. Harrison Wales shouted. When Barry was still thinking about whether to kill him or not, Thea nimbly flashed a few times and rushed up. Taking advantage of his weakness to kill him, this guy would definitely be a disaster if he was left alive. While she was rushing, the soft whip in her hand did not stop. A large amount of flame was attached to the tip of the whip. As long as Extreme Speed was entangled, he would definitely be burned into ashes. Bang! The distance between the two was quickly shortened. Thea's speed was indeed not as fast as Extreme Speed, but when one of them stood still and the other ran, it was not even 1/10 of a second. She raised her arm slightly, and the soft whip rolled towards Extreme Speed, who had no resistance. Her movements were considered fast in the eyes of ordinary people, but in the eyes of Extreme Speed, it was still very slow. He knew that he had to dodge, but unfortunately, his injuries were too severe. With this level of injury, even if he sped up the cell healing, it would still take him more than half a day to recover. He watched as the soft whip wrapped in flames drew a beautiful arc in the air and rolled towards his neck. His limbs were weak, and he barely took half a step back. At the critical moment, bang! There was an explosion, and a portal rose up on his left. 3 people jumped out of the portal. The white-haired woman in the lead raised her hand and launched a fierce ice blast without thinking. The tip of the whip was blocked by her for a moment, and Thea could only shake her wrist to retrieve the soft whip. The remaining 2 people hurriedly pulled her back. Chapter 662. F***CK. Thea looked at these troublemakers and couldn't help but curse. The woman who blocked her attack first had white hair and black eyeshadow and was wearing a leather jacket. The man behind her had fire in his eyes, hair, and hands. The other was short and wore a long trench coat and sunglasses. Haha. I'm dying of laughter. Psycher, Caitlin, look at your image in this world. Here, Extreme Speed is a bad guy. Psycher, Caitlin, and Ronnie are also bad guys. Thea held her stomach and laughed. Extreme Speed was the biggest threat. These guys looked scary, but she didn't take them seriously. With a whoosh, Little Flash finally came to her side. Looking at the familiar strangers in front of him, he was also a little confused. Extreme Speed didn't have time to talk nonsense with Mississippi. His hands moved quickly and wrapped around his wound. Only then did he stand up shakily and looked at Thea with hazy eyes. What are you looking at? You guys are living so happily. You must have surrendered to the Wasteland Wolf, right? You even betrayed the world that gave birth to you. How dare you stand in front of me, a bunch of scum. Hearing her words, the expressions of the people opposite her were different. Extreme Speed's face was covered so tightly that she couldn't see their expressions. She only heard him snort in disdain. The evil version of Firestorm chose to ignore him. Psycher and Caitlin were a little unnatural, but they quickly recovered. Be careful. This woman is very powerful. She seems to be a new god like the Wasteland Wolf. Extreme Speed whispered to the few of them. In the past, he didn't even care about these useless people. But now that he was seriously injured, he had to unite them. Yo, looks like you have been to many universes. You are indeed knowledgeable. You even know about new gods. Barry, you go and deal with. Barry, be careful. Thea was just about to let Barry deal with the seriously injured Extreme Speed when she saw a blood-red blade appear out of thin air and stab towards Barry's back. Even though he was warned, Barry's lack of experience was exposed. He actually made a move to turn around. He quickly realized that something was wrong, but it was too late to dodge. Thea cussed under her breath and threw out a flame blast. At the same time, Barry also unleashed his potential and moved 2 steps to the left. Puff! With a muffled sound, a huge sword more than a meter long pierced through Barry from the back. Facing Thea's attack, the ambusher chose to retreat. He pulled out his great sword and Barry's blood flowed out. Thea hurriedly used greater healing on him and instantly checked his condition. The son of the god of speed had avoided a vital point at the critical moment. Although he was seriously injured, he was still worth saving. Caitlin, take them away first. Thea tossed Barry to the back and stared at the enemies that suddenly appeared. He wore a strangely shaped and majestic horned helmet. His eyes were scarlet and his face was covered in scars. He wore a full body armor that was as black as ink on his body that was more than 2 meters tall. The most eye-catching thing about him was that his belt was decorated with the head of a roaring demon. Great Plains Wolf. You bastard. How dare you use your doppelganger to face me? Thea sneered. She looked at the new deity who was surrounded by a faint red aura. He held a great sword in his left hand and a great axe in his right. The new deity looked at her for a while. The goddess of trade? I've heard about you from Gracious. You don't know your limits. I've seen the evil that shrouded the multiverse. I've seen those great powers. For someone of your level, I only need my doppelganger to deal with you. Ha! She didn't know what he was really capable of, but this guy's bragging skills made her feel ashamed. After all, he was Kan Yoja's younger brother and Darkseid's uncle. Although he was weak, he had met people who could crush Thea. Cut the crap. You only know how to attack from behind. I'm going to avenge this universe, Batman, and Diana. Thea said as she put on the god's hush armor. She brandished her holy sword and attacked. Carrying a resplendent light, the sacred sword felt her anger, and the sword's aura surged like the sea. The Great Plains Wolf put away his long sword and held his great axe with both hands. Countless souls of the dead lingered around the weapon. His aura was not weak either, and he met the holy sword head-on. Boom! There was a loud explosion at the point where the two of them met. The road that originally belonged to Star City was shattered by the shockwave. Many abandoned cars on the road were crushed into dust by the huge force. The evil quartet retreated a few hundred meters. On the other side, Caitlin was also treating Barry while commanding a few ordinary people to retreat. Both of them were not satisfied with the exchange of blows. The Great Plains wolf felt that Thea's strength was beyond his expectations. Heidi was even more unhappy. She didn't use her full strength. Instead, she was estimating the strength of her opponent's main body. The result was not too optimistic. The fact that her opponent's doppelganger could exchange a few blows with her spoke volumes. The god's hush armor crazily transformed the thunder magic and added it to the holy sword. The sword was originally 1 meter long, but now it was surrounded by dense lightning. It was even longer than before. The Great Plains wolf also began to accumulate power. A large number of souls of the dead were gathered on his great axe. There seemed to be wailing in the dark red light. These were the lives that died under his great axe. Now, they were used as sacrifices to increase his attack power. His great axe seemed to have endless power. Thea didn't take it head-on. Instead, she defended and attacked. She constantly used the magic on her holy sword to wear down the souls of the dead on his great axe. The Great Plains wolf saw through her intention and attacked even faster. The two of them exchanged 3 blows. When the Great Plains wolf blocked Thea's attack and the two of them passed by each other, he directly took out his great sword and turned around to stab at her. Clang! His great sword was knocked away. Thea was already prepared for his sneak attack. She blocked his sneak attack with her holy sword and took advantage of the momentum to cut his waist. Ha! The Great Plains wolf's lower abdomen shrank slightly. The evil ghost head that she thought was just a decoration suddenly came to life and bit at the holy sword. Although it was burned to ashes, it also bought time for the Great Plains wolf to pull away. Although it was only one move, the Great Plains wolf who had rich battle experience could see that Thea had been hiding her strength. She maintained a stalemate with the previous few moves just for this last move. She was really insidious. Thea was also a little regretful. She always thought that it was just a decoration. Who knew that this armor of hers had such a function? She wasted a good opportunity. Even if it was a clone, the main body would lose a part of its divine power if it was killed. She had been silently suppressing her strength in order to make the Great Plains wolf think that she was just us. Now that her plan was ruined, she didn't regret it anymore and attacked with all her strength. You bastards, come at me together. Facing Thea, who was going all out, the Great Plains wolf didn't have the pride he had when he was bragging. He hurriedly shouted to the ground. Just now, Thea's move was fast and urgent. If he didn't have some trump cards, he would have been cut in half. The evil 4 people on the ground looked at each other. Didn't you have internal conflicts before? We thought that it was a one-on-one fight. You should have said so earlier if you could gang up on us. Chapter 663. Actually, the Great Plains wolf was in a dilemma. Who knew how a new god like Thea would appear in his territory? His main body had just returned to the Apocalypse Star, leaving behind only a clone to command the army. He also didn't want to expose himself and ask for help from the ants that he looked down on before. But facing Sia, who was at full power and whose strength, speed, and divine power suppressed him in all aspects, he really couldn't do anything. If he used his doppelganger against Sia's main body, he would basically die. Helplessly, he revealed his true strength. Ignoring the others, Extreme Speed, who had always been unruly, stared at the Great Plains wolf thoughtfully. Even if he was heavily injured, his speed should still be extremely fast. In the end, after hearing the order, the first one to rush up and attack Sia was Firestorm. Perhaps considering the pressure Thea would bring, Extreme Speed still joined in the attack. As for how much effort he put in, only the heavens knew. Firestorm wantonly unleashed raging flames, finally giving the Great Plains wolf some time to recover. The remaining Frost Killer and Evil Cisco, codenamed Echo, cursed silently. Are you stupid? Why are you working so hard? However, facing the Great Plains wolf's ferocious gaze, the two did not have Extreme Speed's confidence and did not dare to slack off. They braced themselves and surrounded Thea. Since you want to die, I'll send you on your way. The young mistress was so angry that she laughed. Did they think they could win with numbers? There was a qualitative difference. She was not afraid and charged towards the 5 with her holy sword. Extreme speed was slacking off and was instantly sensed by her. The Great Plains wolf was also conserving his strength. Frost Killer and Echo dealt with it reluctantly. The only one attacking fiercely was Evil Firestorm, who did not know what was going on. Thea secretly cursed him for being an idiot. Even if she was stronger than them, it was not that easy to take them down. The Great Plains wolf and Extreme Speed were both very good at sneak attacks. She had to split more than half of her attention on the two of them. Firestorm's strength was also not to be underestimated. He was like a human-shaped nuclear reactor, constantly releasing a large amount of energy. Moreover, as the battle dragged on, the nuclear energy in Firestorm's body also intensified. The external manifestation was that the power of his attacks was increasing, and the frequency of his attacks was increasing. Firestorm's strength was one of the best even among the first-rate heroes. Thea did not have an overwhelming advantage. Coupled with the support of the Frost Killer and Echo, she fell into a stalemate. With a slash of her sword, she slashed apart the energy impact of the firestorm and dodged the sharp axe of the wasteland wolf. Flames and frost flew together, and shock waves and thrown lightning flew around her. Thea deeply felt the feelings of Hades when he was besieged by the Greek gods. These guys were not as good as her, but they relied on their numbers to beat her up. We have to break their formation. Thea switched her sword to her right hand, and began to chant an incantation with her left hand. Interrupt her. The Great Plains wolf was a pure warrior, so it didn't understand what kind of spell it was, but it didn't need to think to know that it wasn't a good thing. Firestorm and Extreme Speed began to attack fiercely. Thea directly crushed a gem, activated a defensive spell, and focused on casting spells. She was preparing to cast a legendary spell. Even with her current strength, she still needed to make some necessary preparations with hand gestures. A faint golden barrier blocked their attacks. Firestorm and Extreme Speed clashed a few times. The barrier seemed thin, but it was abnormally sturdy. Extreme Speed shouted, "Echo, use your ability!" Evil Psyker's eyes glowed with a faint blue light, and his hands released a high-frequency vibration wave. The barrier started to shake violently with the vibration wave, and finally shattered into powder like an eggshell. Extreme Speed's eyes showed a hint of mockery. Thea was also a little surprised. Psyker's ability was very strong. She was currently casting high-level spells, and the defensive spell just now was already the highest-level spell that an ordinary wizard could cast. However, she was fearless. She had mastered the gem magic, and she had robbed Hades's treasury. She still had a few sacks of gems that stored such spells. Extreme Speed watched as Thea crushed another gem, and the same barrier as before reappeared. He signaled for Evil Psyker to continue. After shattering 3 of Thea's barriers, their expressions turned ugly. The other side's defensive barrier was endless, and Psyker was already exhausted to the point of exhaustion. High-frequency vibration wave required a lot of mental and physical strength, and it required a lot of physical strength. This was Evil Psyker, not Whitebeard, and his body was not that strong. When he sensed that something was wrong, he quickly turned around to take a look, and he almost spat out a mouthful of blood. That bastard Great Plains wolf wanted them to risk their lives for him, while he himself had 8 Zhang away. Moreover, from the looks of it, he was preparing to retreat. There was no need to talk nonsense. He quickly noticed the joy on Sia's face and the energy flowing between her palms, so he also ran back without saying anything. Now you want to run? It's too late. Thea's hands glowed with a faint green light. This was a legendary undead spell called Torliton's Killing Cloud. As she raised her hands, the entire sky and earth were covered by countless acid clouds. Just looking at them would make one's eyes burn. Thea sensed that Barry, Caitlin, and the rest had already left the city, and no longer had any worries. Such a dilapidated star city should not exist in this world. Destroy it! A huge amount of mana was injected into the acid clouds, and the clouds quickly covered the surroundings. Regardless of whether it was the roads, houses, human remains, or abandoned industrial products, everything was engulfed by the acid clouds and dismembered into a puddle of green water. She saw many scenes through the acid cloud with her spiritual power. She saw the dilapidated Quinn's old house and her childhood school, Moira's grave, Oliver's cenotaph, and Thea Quinn's coffin that belonged to this world. She retracted her gaze. This Thea is not me. You want me to lie in a coffin? Let Darkseid do it himself. Everything was covered by the acid clouds. Large amounts of materials, regardless of their structure, purpose or meaning, were all broken down by her and returned to the natural world. Thea could even feel the green of all things in this world cheering. The wasteland wolf had been hiding in the periphery at first, and now he was running away. His extreme speed was even more amazing. No one knew if he had recovered from his injuries or if he had great potential, but he was surrounded by electric arcs. He didn't even look at his companions as he ran away. Sia controlled the acid clouds to chase after him from several directions, but he managed to escape at the last moment several times. "You can't run away from me." The acid cloud had already shrouded the whole city. Under the effect of magic power, everything in front of him was green. The sky was green, and so was the ground. He was blocked by Sia several times and had to run back. His vision was blurred, and he was not familiar with the road. His sensitive perception had been warning him, but unfortunately, he could not run out. The three friends he had abandoned did not have super speed. In the face of the corrosive acid clouds, the three of them huddled together for warmth. The Frost Killer and Firestorm were desperately using their energy to buy some time for Echo to open a portal. As for where they would be teleported to, they did not care. They just wanted to escape. Evil Psyker was already at the end of his tether after continuously relying on the vibration waves to shatter Sia's protective shield. Vibrations were a double-edged sword. If one's physical fitness was not up to par, they would hurt themselves as well as the enemy. Evil Psyker's mind was a mess, and his vision was a little blurry. However, he knew that if he gave it his all, he could still live. The veins on his forehead were bulging, and his eyes were bloodshot. He was trying his best to communicate with the outside world, trying to find a way out. Chapter 664. Thea finally understood why Batman set up the anti-teleportation device. She had already set up an inescapable trap, but the enemy only needed to teleport to escape. This was just too annoying. Since the young mistress was unhappy, it was only natural that others would be even more unhappy. Her green eyes reflected Evil Psyker's figure as she lightly snorted. "He's just a mortal." Her green eyes glowed brightly, and two sharp gazes shot towards Evil Psyker, who was opening a teleportation gate. Thea wanted to eliminate him from the source. The three of them were trying their best to maintain the battle. Previously, Thea's attention was focused on extreme speed, which was why they were barely able to survive until now. How could a legend-ranked undead spell be blocked so easily? "Psyker, hurry up." The white-haired Frost Killer's expression was extremely ugly. Initially, the attack wasn't that powerful, so they could still use some buildings to block it. Now that Thea was serious, buildings? Even steel would be corroded. The three of them didn't think that they could be tougher than steel. Evil Psyker had never felt that opening a teleportation gate was so difficult. He didn't understand that magic interfered greatly with teleportation, especially legend-ranked spells. Ordinary mages wouldn't be able to cast a spell of this level without several hundred people preparing it for 2 months. Fortunately, he was powerful and had trained a lot. Under the layers of interference, he found the coordinates of the outside world with great difficulty. "I found it." Unfortunately, before he could even finish his sentence, he was enveloped by an incomparably terrifying aura. His survival instincts and all sorts of subconscious warned him, but his body was too tired, and his opponent's attack was too fast. The last thing Evil Psyker saw was 2 rays of green light shooting out from the green mist and directly striking him. Then, his vision turned black, and he was eliminated from the source. Sensing the abnormality, the evil Frost Killer and Firestorm were only left with confusion. Everything related to Evil Psyker had been erased from their memories. The two of them no longer remembered that they had such a companion. That was why they were puzzled. What were they doing here? Why didn't they run when facing the deadly poison mist? Instead, they chose to stay here and endure. The two of them were completely confused, but the poison mist wouldn't let them go. The thick and colorful mist directly enveloped the two of them, and when their energy ran out, it would be their time to die. After killing a living person, Thea didn't feel anything. She didn't have a headache like before. She knew that this was the result of the gods relying on their life rating to crush ordinary people. With a wave of her hand, the heavy fog suppressed the evil duo. Her gaze once again focused on extreme speed. Using the same trick, 2 more green lights shot out. Extreme Speed, who was sprinting at full speed, had extremely sharp reflexes. In terms of pure perception, he was more than 10 times sharper than Evil Psyker. He had noticed Thea's gaze the moment it got close. He definitely did not check the almanac before leaving the house today. What kind of strange things were these? 2 rays that could bend? He quickly realized that no matter how he moved to the side to dodge, the 2 rays of light were still chasing after him. Danger! 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 His perception had been desperately transmitting this signal to him, so he could only keep running. Extreme Speed didn't know what this thing was, but because he had run a few laps in the fog, his nerves were a little sluggish. In his opinion, being hit by this ray was no different from being swallowed by the fog. Both were extremely dangerous, so running away was always the right choice. When the Great Plains wolf saw this from afar, all that was left was shock. What a joke! A green ray that can track? He had seen the moment when Psyker was killed. The Great Plains wolf was a new god with a unique trait, so the Eye of Obliteration could not erase his memory. He was very familiar with the fluctuations of this ability, which was why he was so shocked. How similar was this to Darkseid's Omega Ray? Both could erase traces of their existence, and both were extremely fast. The only difference was that Darkseid's ray was red, while this goddess's was green. This, he mumbled to himself for a while. He had been very confident in the battle between Darkseid and the Heavenly Father. After all, Darkseid was stronger than the Heavenly Father. Now, he was starting to lose confidence. If the Goddess of Wealth interfered at a critical moment in the battle between the 2 bosses, Darkseid might not win. After all, he was only slightly stronger than the Heavenly Father, not to the point where he could crush the Heavenly Father. The Great Plains wolf hid far away and pondered about the future. At this moment, Extreme Speed felt that he had no future left. His entire body hurt from running. He was already heavily injured, and now he was running like crazy. Thea controlled the thick fog in front of him to block his path, while the tracking rays chased after him from behind. Countless houses, corpses, and plants had been decomposed into some kind of green substance that covered the ground in layers. Extreme Speed could run on water, so the muddy environment did not affect him much. However, he knew that his escape route and range were rapidly shrinking. He could feel that the rays behind him were lethal. Several times, he tried to find a wall, a person, or something of the same size that he could pass through. Unfortunately, Thea was prepared for this. She had swept the entire street clean. He knew that the Flash had dodged the Omega Ray, but trying to pass through an object to block the rays? Dream on! Extreme Speed racked his brains to think of a way to save himself. He ran on the spot and created an air wall. The poisonous cloud was indeed temporarily blocked, but the rays were still stubbornly pursuing him. This was the power of law, and it had nothing to do with air. Realizing that the tracking rays behind him were the most dangerous, he focused all his attention behind him. He threw lightning bolts behind him, but unfortunately, the rays were locked onto him. They were not afraid of any interference. Extreme Speed's wounds began to worsen. Large amounts of blood flowed out, and half of his body was dyed red. Dragging his heavily injured body and running non-stop for several minutes, his stamina was almost at its limit. If he did not use the poisonous fog or the obliterating rays, he would definitely die in 30 seconds. However, this person's character could be described as resolute. Even in the most dangerous situation, he did not give up and was still trying to find a way out. The entire city was covered by Thea's mental power. She had already foreseen the rapid doomsday. There was no need for careful calculations. The obliterating rays would catch up to the target in 12 seconds and he would disappear completely. Just as she was watching the rapid doomsday for a few seconds, something unexpected happened. A giant hand suddenly appeared on the battlefield. The giant hand directly blocked the tracking rays. Its 5 fingers closed and easily crushed the obliterating rays. Sia didn't even have time to react before she felt an invincible power directly teleporting her. In less than 1,000th of a second, she went from the muddy Star City to the majestic and solemn Snow Mountain. The change in the environment did not attract her attention. She stood at the top of the mountain and looked at the giant in front of her. He was wearing a green robe and a green hood. His face was hazy and she could not see his face. Thea gasped. A ghost. How did this guy appear? Chapter 665. Thea did not care why this big boss jumped out, but she was not afraid. The spirit was the spirit of God's anger and vengeance. His purpose was to follow the path of justice, and what she did today was absolutely righteous. The giant, who was taller than a mountain, was sizing her up. Thea was also comparing the difference between them, but the result was a little pessimistic. This guy was beyond her comprehension. Just like the Heavenly Father and Darkside, who she had never met before. Thea felt that if she persevered, she would be able to catch up to them one day. However, facing the spirit was like facing a high-dimensional life form. All the rules that she had mastered could be changed and modified at will. She controlled the rules, while the spirit made the rules. They were not on the same level at all. As long as he wanted to, he could do anything. What was there to fight? This was a real boss, a real god. Why did you drag me here? I'm just following my path of justice. She had to clarify her position first. She was the righteous one. Don't do something stupid that will make your enemies happy, Milady said with a pounding heart. The giant's mouth opened slightly, and a voice entered Thea's heart. New gods should not participate in the war of that universe. The voice was dull and flat, like a machine. Thea frowned and thought. This guy was quite cunning. He did not talk about justice or evil. In fact, there were many loopholes in his words. However, Milady did not dare to argue. The one with the bigger fist was the right one. What about the Wasteland Wolf? He's also a new god. He's killing intelligent life forms without restraint. Are you not going to do anything about it? Milady was not acting. She was really unhappy with the Wasteland Wolf. This bastard had killed Diana in that world. She could not tolerate it. Perhaps the spirit boss had been deceived by her acting skills that were 70% real and 30% fake. Or perhaps the spirit boss didn't care at all. He was silent for a long time. You can't attack mortals. I don't care about the war of the new gods. His tone was stiff, and there was no room for negotiation. After saying that, the spirit took a step forward and disappeared into the white snow mountain. Thea only heaved a sigh of relief after the other party left. The pressure was too great. If she couldn't fight a mortal, then so be it. After all, the other party was a real big shot. Taking a closer look at his surroundings, he realized that this wasn't Earth 2 at all. Naturally, it wasn't Earth 1 either. On a whim, this big shot had directly pulled him to another parallel universe. Most likely, the other party also knew about their sonic boom channel, so they didn't care if they pulled them in or sent them away. Since you're done talking, you can go back by yourself. Thea found the coordinates of Earth 2 again, opened a passage, and flew back. After running around for half a day, he rushed back to Star City. He found that the acid cloud was still shrouding the city, but the bad guys had all escaped. She didn't know that when she was teleported away, the Wasteland Wolf was scared silly. The original tracking ray had already made him terrified, and the sudden appearance of the giant hand and the irresistible teleportation made his liver tremble. The Wasteland Wolf might not have been very strong, but he had high standards. As the younger brother of Yojia Khan and Darkside's uncle, he could proudly say that he had seen the ultimate power of the universe. From the great power that teleported Thea away, he felt a power that wasn't inferior to his brother Yojia Khan. Why would such a high level of power appear here? What did this mean? He didn't know the answers, but he knew that he had to contact his main body immediately to discuss the next step. Extreme Speed, who was saved at the moment of death, was also dumbfounded. He didn't know who saved him, but without Thea's control, he finally found a safe route. His wounds had worsened to the point where he would die if he didn't save him. He spent another 2 seconds to save Evil Firestorm and Frost, and used their powers to temporarily seal his wounds. The 3 of them escaped Star City in a sorry state. Thea caught up with Barry and Caitlin, and asked curiously, "Where are you guys going?" As if sensing her determination to defend justice, old Robert finally found her more pleasing to the eye. He replied in a low voice, "Gotham." They didn't speak a word along the way. Thea healed Barry from time to time. His wounds healed very quickly, and it was estimated that he would be back to normal in half a day. "Is Extreme Speed dead?" Barry asked. Speaking of this topic, Thea was also a little depressed. I was just 1 step away, and he escaped. Also, she glanced at everyone's expression. I can't attack Extreme Speed anymore. You're injured? Old Robert's expression was a little shaken, and Thea could vaguely see a trace of worry in his eyes. Thea sighed. A big shot stopped me from continuing to deal with normal people. You can leave the Great Plains Wolves to me, but those normal bad guys, you guys have to deal with them. Big shot? Everyone's head was filled with question marks. The thick fog had shrouded Star City, And they weren't blind. Could there be someone stronger than Thea, who had caused such a huge commotion? Everyone's heart was a little heavy. It was a sense of disappointment that no matter how hard they fought, they were always within the expectations of others. "Leave extreme speed to me," Barry said solemnly. Whether it was Reverse Lightning's hatred or the other party's extreme speed, it showed that the two of them were irreconcilable enemies. "But extreme speed is too fast. I can't catch up to him at all." Barry said another sentence, and everyone fell silent again. Thea had already realized that extreme speed was twice as fast as him, and Barry had no chance of winning against him. Her acceleration spell couldn't be used on extreme speed, and she didn't dare to create trouble for extreme speed. No matter how she thought about it, she couldn't think of a good way to help Barry increase his speed. They didn't speak along the way. They took old Robert's truck and rushed to Gotham. Barry needed to recuperate further, and Thea also needed to recover some of her divine power and spiritual energy. The burden of legendary spells wasn't small on her as well. "This is Gotham?" Psyker pointed at a place that looked more like a huge garbage dump than a city with dirty water flowing everywhere. Old Robert's expression was gloomy. He reached out and pressed a switch on his battlesuit, and in a short while, a pitch-black shadow flew in front of them from afar. It was a familiar bat fighter, but the man who jumped out was no longer the vigorous middle-aged man. He was very old and tired, but in order to fulfill his son's last wish, he didn't care about his old age and body. He put on this battlesuit and walked to the front line of resistance. The style of the battlesuit was the same as Batman's. The only difference was the bat on the chest. Bruce's bat was black, and his was blood red. "You shouldn't have brought so many people to my place." The other party ignored Thea and the others, and looked at old Robert with a gloomy expression. Old Robert was also helpless. He wanted to go back. But the city had been corroded into a wasteland. There wasn't even a tree. There was nowhere to hide. Old Robert glanced at the young mistress who was daydreaming. He didn't know how much of what she said before about not attacking extreme speed was true. He pointed at Barry and said to the old bat with an ugly expression, "Do you see that kid in red clothes? He's an extreme speed from another world. He's injured. We need his power to fight against extreme speed, and we also need your medical equipment and experimental equipment." Chapter 666. Old Thomas glanced at the flash, thought for a moment, then walked back to the bat and gestured for them to follow. Old Green Arrow was cursing in his heart. "Follow? Follow my ass. Didn't you see that I drove a truck here? You drove a plane for me to chase after you with a car?" Thea was speechless. The Quinn family and the Wayne family were the wealthiest families in the world. However, without her interference, her own Green Arrow would probably still be riding a small motorcycle and killing monsters. Old Luo's equipment was also terrible. She originally thought that there was a difference between Bruce and Oliver. Now that she saw Old Luo and Old Bat, she finally understood the root of the problem. The Quinn father and son were not good at transforming wealth into combat power. She gave Caitlin a look. A layer of ice formed under the car and carried the truck to catch up with the bat. "Wow!" Psyker was shocked. He originally thought that Caitlin's ability was limited. Now, it seemed that her ability was great. He thought about his good brother Barry's speed and his sister Caitlin's ice ability. What about himself? He vaguely remembered that Thea had told him something about the last step. It was concise and anyone with a brain could understand it. He gently nudged Thea with his elbow. She looked at him in confusion. "You said that I have superpowers too?" Psyker asked carefully. "Yes." Thea was almost asleep. She did not understand why he suddenly asked this. "Am I going to have superpowers soon? What do you think my ability is?" Psyker was really envious of his two friends. This time and space did not reject superpowers. Barry and Caitlin also turned to look at him. She scratched her head. Did he not see Echo's ability before? Oh right. She suddenly remembered that Echo had been erased. In theory, none of them had seen it before. However, it did not matter if others forgot. As long as she remembered it, Psyker's superpower had great potential. Everything had a vibration frequency. If it was developed, it would not be a problem for him to become a first-rate hero. If Psyker's physical fitness was improved, it would not be difficult for him to tear through the air like the Pirate King Whitebeard. Unfortunately, Psyker's physique could only allow him to unleash a few shockwaves. Even the evil version of Psyker had not been able to unleash this ability. Based on her memories, Thea projected the image of evil Psyker's battle onto the water mirror for everyone to see. Me? This is me? Psyker saw the evil version of himself mixed in with the speedy Frost, but he had no recollection of seeing this person before. Barry and Caitlin were also puzzled. Thea didn't know how to explain. See this person? This is your ability. You can create vibration waves and travel between different worlds. Psyker, your ability is really strong. Looking at the evil version of himself, Psyker was speechless for a long time. Suddenly, he thought of something and touched his entire body. You mean to say that my ability has already awakened? Thea glanced at him in annoyance. This guy was too slow. It's been awakened since you came to this world with me. She ignored Psyker, who was sitting in the car practicing his air-splitting palm. How could a superpower be so easy to master? Let's train properly when we reach the Bat Cave later. The few of them walked through the ruins of Gotham and finally stopped at the entrance of the subway. Old Batman led the way and the few of them got off the truck and walked in. Looking at the dazzling array of decorations in the cave, a few of them who had never entered the Batcave before couldn't help but ask Thea, "Is there any difference between the Batcave here and the one in our world?" Yes, in the eyes of the public, the Batcave was extremely mysterious. The lady who took pictures of herself with Batman and Superman to fool the voters was one of the few who had entered the Batcave in the eyes of the public. Thea looked around. There's not much difference. The giant coin over there was seized from the two-faced man. As for the giant dinosaur in front, I heard that it was brought back from an adventure with Robin. This place was still different from the Batcave in the original space-time. There were some that she had seen and some that she had not. You know him, right? Are you friends? Old Thomas walked in front and listened to Thea's introduction of a few of the collectibles. His attention was immediately attracted. It wasn't hard to guess who the he was talking about was. Thea nodded. He's a good friend. He's a great person. I taught his son for about 2 years. She didn't mention that Batman almost became her relative because of the Ninja Master. He has a son in your world? How's his son? Does he look like him? Thea recalled Damien's naughty face and found it funny. Stubborn, smart, tenacious. He's a very good child. Old Thomas was wearing a mask. A smile finally appeared on his tough face. Although it was quickly suppressed, Thea could still feel the old man's fatigue. Although it's a little rude, do you want to take a look at our world? His parents in our space-time passed away that night. Thomas Wayne stopped in his tracks and quickly recovered. He shook his head firmly. My son is already dead. I don't need a replacement. I believe he doesn't need one either. Although the old man rejected Thea's suggestion, their relationship became much closer. When he found out that she was old Robert's daughter, he was finally moved. Although he didn't say it out loud, Thea could guess. He was probably thinking, how could that old man Robert have such a beautiful daughter? Are you kidding me? Old Thomas of this world was a doctor in his early years. He secretly worked with the Gotham Mafia to do some laundry detergent business. However, after that night of gunfire, he managed to survive. After that, he changed his name until his son died in battle. Only then did he put on his battle robe again and fight for mankind, for Bruce. His body was already old. He only relied on a medicine called Miraculous Element to maintain his physical strength. The price was his lifespan. Thea wanted to talk about his body later. The few of them checked Barry first. Even if the Wasteland Wolf's knife didn't hit any vital parts, this kind of penetrating wound would require further treatment. Who is this guy? There was another patient in old Thomas's infirmary. He was lying on the operating table in pain. If it wasn't for his weak breathing, Thea would have thought that this guy was dead. A pitiful guy. He was seriously injured and collapsed under the bridge in a train accident. I saw a strange power in his body, so I picked him up. He has been in this state for a few days now. Old Thomas took off all the bandages on Barry's body. He checked the wound while answering Thea's questions. After that, he applied medicine and changed the bandages. Thea could only express her displeasure in this way. She definitely didn't know this guy who was on his last breath. However, she had experienced this kind of similar experience many times. Dead people, poison ivy, Jared, all kinds of people that shouldn't have happened and shouldn't have survived. Without exception, they were all lying in front of her in this state, waiting to be rescued. Chapter 667. This guy had a very faint green of all things in his body, which was the key substance that maintained his vitality. Thea asked Old Bat again, Do you know this guy's name? Is he a righteous man? Old Bat bandaged Barry's wound very seriously. His IQ was also off the charts as he asked, "What do you mean? Can you save him?" "His name is Alan Scott. From the information I have, he is a good man." Milady could only use he to express her helplessness. Alan Scott. She had an impression of this name. He was a Green Lantern who used the green of all things as an energy source. Of course, he was also the only one. This universe didn't have a Green Lantern hero who traveled back thousands of years to teach the Guardians how to make the lantern ring. From the 31st century, the Queen of Emerald Eyes could only use a little of the Green Lantern ring. Even after 1,000 years, the technological level contained in the lantern ring was still beyond the reach of humans. This was definitely a technological crystallization of the future. But this universe didn't have any Guardians. No Green Lanterns, no yellow or green lanterns. In other words, no one knew how to make the lantern ring. No one taught it. She couldn't make it herself, Batman couldn't, and old Batman couldn't either. This was a craft that only a few people knew how to make. But Milady was one of those few people. And she had studied the green of all things. In the entire multiverse, how many people knew how to make the lantern ring and had come into contact with the green of all things? Thea felt that she was probably the only one. Was it her who created Alan Scott, the unique Green Lantern? She used to think it was ridiculous, but now she was very calm. This was fate. There was nothing wrong with the silk thread. This person's future was in her hands. She could live if she helped him make the lantern ring. If she pretended not to see it, he would die. Are you sure he is a good man? I will reshape the vitality in his body and he will get new abilities. If he is a bad guy. Thea didn't quite believe in her memory now, so she asked Old Bat for confirmation. Old Bat didn't dare to make a decision, so he pulled old Rollo over. The two of them were more than 100 years old together. They recorded Alan Scott's birth to his love life. Well, this person has a boyfriend. After studying for a long time, they finally made a decision. He is a good man. Thea immediately lowered her head and injected her spiritual power into the green of all things. So weak, the green of all things here was too weak. Thea's spiritual body looked at the saplings that were not even as tall as her calf and clicked her tongue. He had seen the tree council in the original space-time, and any one of those tree spirits could burst the small space in front of him. Perhaps it was because Thea had dissolved Star City, allowing countless nutrients to return to the natural world, but the green of all things was very friendly towards her. However, being friendly did not change the fact that they were very weak. Thea could not extract the material needed to condense the lantern ring. She could not make bricks without straw. Remember to compensate me when the time comes. I'm the goddess of wealth. Thea didn't care whether these saplings understood or not. She took out a small ball of green of all things from her own spacetime. These were all parts that he had taken when he was helping the swamp monster split its soul. It was rich in the extremely pure green of all things, and the saplings instantly felt a power of the same origin. They let out an emotion similar to howling at Thea, and the Missy directly threw the green essence in her hand to them. Although the amount was not much, the quality was strong enough. The saplings began to grow until they reached Thea's waist before stopping. You guys should also want to choose that guy outside to be your spokesperson, right? The saplings transmitted information to Thea. She scanned them with her spiritual sense and instantly understood the situation. Similar to the swamp monsters on Earth, they also wanted to find a hired thug. Unfortunately, they were too weak, and the wasteland wolves outside were destroying the planet's environment. If Thea did not come today, they would only get weaker. You can't be my spokesperson. You guys don't have enough energy. Make a ring for fun. Thea comforted the saplings and began to extract the green of all things here to make a green lantern ring. In the process of making it, he realized that there seemed to be more energy than he expected. He might as well make 2 rings. One for Brother Alan, and the other for the Missy to kindly accept. After all, she was the one who provided the green of all things in the beginning. Now that it had blossomed and he took it back, they probably wouldn't mind. She had been thinking about the Green Lantern ring in the original timeline, but she did not want to be controlled by the Guardian, so she did not take action. Now that the green of all things in this world was mixed with Brother Alan's characteristics, it produced a kind of courage that was neither right nor wrong. This ring was very valuable for the Missy to master courage. He familiarly made the ring. This was a unique item in this universe. Without any oath, He left Thea's control and began to heal Alan Scott's dying body. A faint green light began to surround his body. The ring also flew up and began the initial transformation of his body. Thea silently retreated, waiting for the birth of the first and probably the last Green Lantern in this universe. He did not care about the strength of the Green Lantern. It was completely dependent on external objects, flashy but useless. But for this universe, it needed the two old men to work hard and the Eagle Girl to carry the burden. This was already a super combat power, right? Alan Scott woke up very quickly. Thanks to the high reputation of Batman in various worlds, he quickly understood his situation and decided to join the Justice faction without much hesitation. But he was confused about how to use his ability. The old bat looked at Thea. The look in his eyes was similar to his son's. Thea reached out her hand and a large section of the way to use the Green Lantern ring was poured into Alan's mind. The usage of the Green Lantern ring and the introduction to magic were all teaching materials that she prepared at any time. If she had to teach any random cat or dog, she would be exhausted. She organized a set of teaching materials with pictures and text and transmitted them to her brain with her spiritual power. She needed to deal with the Great Plains Wolf and the Earth's villains needed to be killed. Thea felt that her time was very tight. She needed to improve the abilities of these people first, and then pull in the army of the new Star of Creation to determine the outcome of the battle. You want to gather the remaining superheroes in this world? To be honest, the old bat did not like to risk everything like this. He was very hesitant. How many people do you have? The army of the Great Plains Wolf is boundless. Now the Earth's resistance army can't provide much help. Old Robert changed his green robe into a red battlesuit. She did not know if it was because the Star City had completely disappeared. My direct army has millions of people, and each of them is a powerful sorcerer. Thea said in her heart. Although it was the accelerated version, even if the Great Plains Wolf reinforcements, we can still do it. But if the scale of the battle is too big, I'm afraid this Earth can't withstand it. The two old men looked at each other and looked at each other's clothes that represented revenge. They were already so old, and their children were all dead. So what if they died? The goal of life was revenge. They did not care whether the Earth exploded or not, as long as they could kill their enemies. Chapter 668. Seeing that the two old men had agreed to her deployment, Thea handed over the contact work to them. Due to the interference of the spirit boss, she still needed to train Barry Allen to deal with extreme speed. The equipment in the Batcave was still sharp. Even though it was the third year after the outbreak of the war, the various technological equipment was still more advanced than Thea's original world. Dr. Harrison Wells was helping Barry to measure his speed. The result was clear just by looking at his unusually serious old face. He can't outrun extreme speed. The doctor's tone was calm and firm, leaving no room for doubt. Facing his affirmation, Barry, who was running so fast that his tongue was about to fall out, was very depressed. Why is his extreme speed so fast? Is it because he absorbed the abilities of other extreme speed users? And why is the color of his lightning blue? Barry's brain felt a little inadequate as he complained casually. He didn't think that anyone would answer him. Dr. Harrison glanced at Barry expressionlessly. I once created a speed serum. You! Little Sean glared at him angrily, but the old man acted as if he didn't see it. Thea covered her face a little. How frank. Even if you tried to hide it a little, you still dared to say it so openly. You must have never been beaten before, right? Seeing that Barry was about to take the drug to chase after extreme speed, she hurriedly stopped this impulsive child. I've done some research on your seraphic speed. It's a very mysterious ability. You might like to use science to explain it, but I have a new view from the perspective of magic. Seraphic speed is a concept that represents the word speed. It's a product of the consciousness of the universe. The young lady's speech was so vague that the few scientists were confused. Dr. Harrison glanced at her from the corner of his eyes. He wanted to say that she was talking nonsense, but he was stopped by his daughter. If you can't use scientific methods to increase your speed, you can try my method. Thea stretched out her hand and displayed a three-dimensional version of the Earth in the air. Speed is something that every single one of us can't live without. Walking, eating, everything's movement contains speed. My method is to take a small part of the speed from everything and add it to Barry's body. This way, he can suppress his extreme speed and kill him. It was such an unimaginable process, but the few scientific guys didn't really understand. However, Barry's kindness made him think of a problem. Would it be harmful to ordinary people? Thea had actually thought of this problem when she was creating the ring from the green of all things. Grafting a part of it in a short period of time could completely crush the speed of taking potions. She calculated in her mind. In theory, it's harmless. It's just that everyone's speed will be slowed down by a few seconds after you intercept their speed. This part of the speed is just an additional addition. I can only lend it to you temporarily. Seeing that they had agreed to this method, Thea began to calculate the nodes and make collection devices. This kind of magic and scientific method was very rare for them. By the evening, they had made a total of 10 devices. Harrison still didn't quite believe in this kind of thing that had no scientific basis. Thea calmly let him set up the experiment on the spot. The device that covered the entire Gotham and the eastern United States was placed in the Bat Cave. Thea signaled Barry to run a few steps to warm up. When Barry reached top speed, she pressed the switch on the device. For a moment, other than Thea, everyone in the Bat Cave felt a little slow. Barry, on the other hand, was slightly faster. Wah! They were all knowledgeable people. They all understood that at this kind of high speed, the price to pay for every bit of improvement was abnormally high. Just by looking at the speed of the potions that made them dizzy, they knew how difficult it was to increase their speed. As for whether this method could be used to increase their speed, she didn't know. After all, there was a limit to the speed that the human body could withstand. Extreme speed wasn't something that could be increased in a day. Barry needed time to adapt and find the limit that his body could withstand. Only then could he calculate the final result. Thea told Barry the location of the 10 nodes and let him install them himself. Looking at Psyker's training, this joker felt a little anxious. However, his talent in combat was inversely proportional to his talent in research. The stronger his research ability was, the weaker his combat ability was. Expecting him to tear the sky apart, cause earthquakes, and create tsunamis, it was better to develop in a sinister direction. Using 4 tails to achieve 1,000 caddies. The ability didn't lie in how powerful it was, but in how it was used in the right place. At least, this was the only request that Psyker had. Psyker, you're an outstanding scientist. The young mistress spoke leisurely. Psyker's expression was a little strange. He wasn't retarded. He knew how to praise someone before scolding them. Thea conjured an image of Bane and continued, your body can't withstand greater vibrations. At the very least, you have to be strong to this extent to be able to unleash 50% of your ability. As Batman's nemesis, Bane's name was widely known. Psyker looked at Bane's huge body and then looked at himself. His smile was ugly. Even if he ate and trained hard every day, he wouldn't be able to reach the level of Bane's 2 meters tall and 300 caddies of muscle. However, you have your advantages. You have a scientific mind. The ability to vibrate is a kind of blessing. It will let you feel the beauty of the multiverse. Barry's ability comes from an unknown space that we can't observe. Extreme speed should be the same. If you can find this space, then I'll go in? Psyker's emotions were fluctuating as he spoke without thinking. Thea narrowed her eyes and looked at him as if he was an idiot. Time was tight and she couldn't be bothered to play riddles with him. You can seal the entrance of this space. Even if it's just for a millisecond, in the battle between Barry and extreme speed, Barry will win. Psyker had a look of realization as he stared blankly at the young mistress. You're so cunning. She left Psyker to figure out how to seal the connection between extreme speed and extreme speed. With this guy's intelligence, after Barry finished installing the nodes, the two of them would try a few times and he would be able to figure out a solution. If it was used unexpectedly, it would be useless no matter how fast extreme speed ran. Thea even felt that with such a huge inertia, there would be a delay of 1 or 2 milliseconds. Without the help of extreme speed, he would fall to his death. On the other side, Alan Scott was trying his best to learn how to use the lantern ring. Caitlin couldn't use the lantern ring in this dimension, but with her experience, she could give some guidance. Poo-loo sounds were heard. A white figure drew an arc in the air and flew into the bat cave nimbly. Thea glanced sideways. Slender figure, slightly tanned face, and a pair of huge wings. Was this the Hawk Girl with the highest combat power in this world? What a sad story. This Hawk Girl looked better than the one in her memory. She didn't seem to be so dumb. She seemed to be smart and capable. At least she looked. Chapter 669. Eagle Helmet. Silver Half-Body Armor. Unlike the Eagle Girl Thea had seen before, this Eagle Girl from Earth 2 did not hold a small hammer but a crossbow. In Thea's perception, this crossbow was also a magic weapon. However, the energy in her body was very strange. It was not the divine power of Horus, but a very strange magic power. The young lady did not speak. She stood there and watched with a very standard expression. The Eagle Girl anxiously said to the old bat, "Khaled's situation is getting worse and worse. He doesn't recognize me anymore." The old bat and his son had a lot in common. Whenever something big happened, they would have a poker face. Did I use up my sedative? Is his blood pressure and heartbeat normal? The Eagle Girl took off her helmet. Compared with the thick-lipped Kendra from Thea's time and space, she was a black beauty. Her voice was a little impatient. His physical indicators are normal, but Neb's erosion is getting worse and worse. Neb? There was also Neb here? She must be talking about Dr. Fate. Thea was a little surprised. Although she did not speak, the old bat noticed her eyes. Do you have a way? This seems to be the field of magic? As the old bat spoke, everyone's eyes focused on the young lady. Who is she? The Eagle Girl who took off her mask thought that her real identity would be exposed and hurriedly raised her crossbow. Thea just glanced at her casually, and the Eagle Girl Kendra felt weak all over and extremely tired mentally. The crossbow in her hand almost fell to the ground. She used all her strength to hold the crossbow with trembling hands. Her footsteps were weak and she did not let herself fall. She was still a weakling who could not withstand a little mental suppression. She was a little stronger than the Eagle Girl from Earth's time and space, but there was a limit to her strength. She rolled her eyes and cancelled the mental suppression. Only then did the Eagle Girl stand up, panting. I am not your enemy, little bird. Thea looked into the Eagle Girl's eyes and said word by word. The Eagle Girl felt a little scared, but as the strongest combat power in this world, her willpower was still passable. She gritted her teeth and did not speak. Old Bat and Old Green Arrow had no intention of stopping him. Superheroes were all prideful. When they met, they would fight to see who had the bigger fist. The bigger fist was the truth. Thea had no interest in subduing a weak chicken. She was just curious that there was a hawk girl in this world but no Hawkman. Who is this Neb you mentioned before? Did he possess Khaled? From Thea's point of view, this should be a story of Neb's helmet's rebirth. However, unlike her original spacetime, Neb here was a little unscrupulous. Eagle Girl did not know what had happened to her just now. She was not even sure if it was Thea who had done it. But when it came to her lover, she didn't refuse. Neb was an ancient sorcerer. He might even be the strongest one. Khaled and I accidentally entered his tomb. After that, I obtained this pair of wings and Khaled. Not a god? Instead, he was a mage? Thea felt that this universe Nabu was like the old Shah Zahn from her world. Was it because he had yet to ascend to godhood, so his humanity was still there, and now that he had caught a sucker, he had begun to possess him? There might be some discrepancies in reality, but it seemed to be close. No matter if it was divine power, magic power, or witchcraft power, once the process of possession began, the two souls would begin to merge. Unless reality was changed, it would be irreversible. Khaled prophesied that a god in yellow lightning would come to save this world. Eagle Girl looked at the young lady after she finished speaking. This woman was so beautiful that even if she was just standing there casually, Eagle Girl felt oppressed. Ordinary people could not sense the young lady's reality. Eagle Girl had some magic power in her body. Although it was not much, she was half a sorcerer. Her crossbow was powered by magic power. Compared to Old Bat and Old Green Arrow, she was more aware of the boundless sea of magic power in Thea's body. Could this woman be the savior in Khaled's prophecy? She wanted to drag her to see Khaled, but the two of them were not on good terms before. Fortunately, Thea took the initiative to offer an olive branch. I am quite proficient in magic. Maybe I can help your friend? The young lady's thoughts were simple. This world was too weak. It was always a good thing to have a magic-type hero. If Neb was not a bad guy, then possession was fine. Do you want to come too? Thea asked the two old men. Old Bat refused directly. He had a lot of things to settle. Old Robert had nothing to do and was ready to go with her. Where does Khaled live? Thea asked Eagle Girl. Eagle Girl put on her helmet again, but she saw Thea and old Luo standing there calmly. They did not look like they were going to fly a plane. She was puzzled but still answered, New Orleans. Thea knew the destination and began to use her spiritual power to locate it. Her spiritual power was now much faster than her supervision. Soon, she found the magic power of the same origin as Eagle Girl. The magic power was very turbid, which was good news. It meant that the assimilation was not complete yet. She pulled Eagle Girl and Old Luo and teleported there. In the previous battle, Old Luo had seen this kind of teleportation several times, so he was not too surprised. Eagle Girl was shocked. They were home in the blink of an eye. I only said New Orleans. How did you find my house? She was very polite and did not teleport directly into the house. Instead, she set the coordinates outside the door and asked Eagle Girl to open the door. The surroundings were barren, and there was only a lone wooden house that stood in the middle of the wilderness. Eagle Girl looked left and right, and finally confirmed that this was indeed her home, and not some kind of trick. She gently pushed the door open and invited the two in. The interior of the house was very unconventional. One wall was full of weapons, including several bows, machetes, giant axes, rocket launchers, energy guns, and so on. On the other side, there were all kinds of ancient books on the bookshelves. Thea had seen Dr. Savannah's study. She quickly saw that the books here contained all kinds of mythological knowledge, secret information, and forbidden knowledge. The owner of these books must have been an archaeologist. A pale-skinned man was sitting on the sofa in front of the floor-to-ceiling window. He had his head down and was thinking about something. He ignored them. Eagle Girl hurriedly ran over and shouted a few times. Unfortunately, the man's eyes were unfocused and did not respond. Let me see. This seems to be a trace of Egyptian magic. Speaking of which, you have Egypt here, right? Thea's hands glowed as she began to search for the man's original consciousness in the spiritual world. Eagle Girl was confused. What did she mean by we have Egypt here? She turned to look at Old Robert. Old Robert finally realized that he had not explained Thea's background. He explained it in a low voice. Is this your daughter from a parallel universe? Eagle Girl only felt that it was ridiculous, but her concern for her lover made her give up the idea of getting to the bottom of it. She focused on Thea's rescue. The young lady did not disappoint her. After a short search, she found Khalid's original consciousness. Chapter 670. A bare-chested man with a scarf wrapped around his head and a cloth belt around his waist was sitting in mid-air in Khalid's mind. The unlucky Khalid was lying face down on the ground. Mysterious words kept coming out of the man's mouth, and the spiritual world that was supposed to be high-rise buildings was being transformed into desert oases and pyramids by him. Thea knew at a glance that it was Nabu, and he had also noticed her. His strength was not bad, but he was not a god. He was just a powerful mage who had lost his body. He might have been a peak demigod when he was alive, but now he did not even have a third of his strength. However, Thea did not hit him right away. She was a righteous person, so she had to say a few words first to ensure that she was standing on the moral high ground. You should be a part of Nabu's consciousness. Why do you want to take over this human's body? Thea could see that this guy was not simply taking over the body, mainly because Nabu was dead, and his main consciousness had disappeared. The guy in front of her could at most be called a remnant consciousness, and he was using the remnant magic to carry out a spiritual transformation ritual. Transforming the body to adapt to Nabu's magic, the person after the ritual would be considered to have taken over Nabu's remnant Khalid. This is Nabu's last wish. This world needs his power, and as long as I complete the transformation, this human will obtain unimaginable magic. The other party had a good temper, but of course, it was also possible that he felt that he could not beat Thea, so he told her his purpose without hiding anything. Seeing that they could communicate, Thea did not want to use force, but this person's ritual was too overbearing, and he did not even ask for her opinion. Forcing her on the horse, she had to be willing, even if she was unwilling. Does this Khalid know what you think? Is he willing to fight for this world? Have you considered this question? Looking at Nabu's confused face, Thea knew that he had not considered it. Perhaps in the eyes of these ancient people, there was no doubt about it. Contributing to the world, dying in battle for humanity was probably a matter of course. Some radical people at first claimed that they were the descendant of some god, and in the end, they believed it. It was all because of this kind of thinking. It was definitely a good thing for modern people to be knowledgeable, but there were too few who were brave enough to contribute and take responsibility. There was no need to mention the sense of reverence. He respected his leader because of his job. Once there were no benefits involved, the leader was nothing.
The lack of reverence was probably one of the reasons why the gods of faith were on their way to the end.
Now, this Neb was taking things for granted. He was using the same method he used on the ancient people to convert modern people and forcefully change Khaled's mental world. Thea felt that when he was done, this brother would not be far from turning evil. I know you're not a bad person, and you don't want to do bad things. But if you continue, are you sure it won't backfire? Let me talk to Khaled and have him cooperate with you and accept your power. What do you think? After Thea finished speaking, she used her divination to extract a few fragments from the possible future. There were a total of 10 images, and in each image, Khaled was wearing a Nabu helmet. However, the results were not optimistic. For out of the 10 futures ended up walking down the path of the antagonist. Perhaps it was because they didn't approve of the future's transformation, or perhaps it was because of the evil corruption that followed, but all of them fell. The power that should have been used to save the world was taken to the extreme. All right, I'll follow your orders, respected goddess. Neb's mental power retreated. Thea pulled the unconscious Khaled up. This guy was really unlucky. A quarter of the transformation. She had no good way to deal with this irreversible process. She could only wake him up first. She reached out and touched Khaled's forehead, reconnecting his consciousness and body that was cut off. Suddenly returning to his body, Khaled felt dizzy and fell off the sofa with a plop. The hawk girl hurriedly helped him up. After a long time, Khaled, who was breathing heavily, finally saw his anxious lover. All the muscles in his body were trembling. It took him a lot of effort to sit back on the sofa. Mr. Khaled, I don't have any conflicts with your world. As a middleman, I talked to Neb in your body. He's not a bad person, but his methods are simple and crude. He thinks highly of you and thinks that you're qualified to receive Neb's magic. With this magic you can help this world. Thea said indifferently. But looking at Khaled's expression, she knew that he didn't take her words seriously. I don't know you, stranger. I won't accept anything from Nebraska. That thing wants to eat me. Do you know that? He wants to eat me. Khaled, who was a little agitated, yelled at Thea. The young lady was a little speechless. This Neb really didn't know how to do things. He forced a deal the moment he came up, and forcefully turned a good thing into a bad thing. Now they were enemies. But it wasn't her habit to let others spit on her. She didn't spoil him at all. She silently cast a spell to freeze Khaled, who was waving his hands to argue with her. This guy was an idiot. When others tried to stop a fight, he actually wanted to beat them up. She couldn't talk nicely to him. She had to use force. Suddenly, Khaled, who had lost all his senses, didn't know what happened. He tried to move his hands and feet, but no matter how hard his brain ordered, no matter how hard he tried, the muscles in his body seemed to be dead. He couldn't even move his head. He wanted to call his lover for help, but he saw that the eagle girl was looking at him with concern. She didn't notice his abnormality. Come help me. Come help me. No matter how hard he tried, he couldn't shout. The eagle girl's expression didn't change at all. It was as if time had stopped. Khaled looked up at the clock on the wall. He stared at the second hand without blinking. His eyes were sore. The second hand didn't show any signs of moving. What's going on? Time seemed to be. The young lady clapped her hands lightly. Mr. Khaled, no wonder Neb chose you. You have the potential to become a mage. Your observation, reasoning, and analysis skills are excellent. Only then did Khaled, who still couldn't speak, notice that there was a moving object in the room. He automatically filtered out Thea's praise, and his eyes revealed a trace of fear towards the unknown. Thea snapped her fingers, and he regained his mobility. He rubbed his stiff limbs and looked at the eagle girl and old Robert, who were still standing still. Even if he was stupid, he knew where the problem was. You. What do you want? His voice was a little hoarse. He didn't understand. Wasn't the person the eagle girl brought back a friend? Thea was even more helpless than him. This guy was too cautious. What do you have that I covet? Chapter 671. I promised Neb that I would persuade you, but I didn't expect you to react so violently, so I had to use this method to help you calm down. I'm not a bad person, and neither is Nebraska. Thea spread her hands to show her innocence. I'm not violent, you guys forced me to do this. Khaled couldn't say anything no matter how dissatisfied he was. He could only say that his emotions had calmed down. Could you stop this supernatural power? The flow of time around them returned to normal, as if the world was filled with color again. Khaled was relieved. Looking at the smiling Thea, he didn't dare to make a fuss anymore. She straightened her expression and tried to appear more serious. The Wasteland Wolf is tormenting this universe. Due to certain rules, I can only deal with the Wasteland Wolf. You guys have to deal with the Earth villains around him. You can ask the old man beside me about this. After saying that, she pointed at old Robert. Old Robert nodded immediately, indicating that this was true.
I know you're not satisfied with Neb's way of doing things, and you even have some bad thoughts, but I want to say that if you can stay true to yourself, even if Neb is an evil god, you should have the confidence to use this power in the right way.
Her words were resolute and in line with mainstream values. Khaled's expression improved a little. I'm not from this world. I'm just a passerby here.
In the future, this universe and this Earth need the power to protect it.
Mr. Khaled, the opportunity is right in front of you. You shouldn't hesitate, whether it's for Earth or your lover. After saying that, Thea pointed at the Hawk Girl. Although there was no Hawkman in this world, as the Hawk Girl's spouse, Khaled was also quite stubborn. She had to break down the logic. As she expected, when she mentioned his wife, Khaled's spirit finally recovered.
However, he still hadn't made up his mind.
Thea also forgot who advised him in the original timeline. She could only wait for him to make a decision. The Hawk Girl began to comfort him. She kept saying that she wouldn't blame him no matter what he chose and that she would support him no matter what. Old Robert's attention was on the crossbow in the room, and he excitedly gestured. Thea casually flipped through the books in the house, but after a while, she lost interest. The legends of the two worlds were different, and there were not many things that could be used as reference. As she watched, she realized that she was getting sleepy. In the past, she would have gotten off work and gone home to spar with the Valkyrie. Now was not the right time. He was so busy that not even a day had passed yet. In the morning, he came out to look for Barry. After that, he fought against the Great Plains Wolf. After that, the acid cloud flattened Star City. After that, he was scared to death by the Spectre boss. In the end, he even had to train those heroes personally. He even helped them make a ring. Now, he even had to mediate their conflict. There were so many things to do today that just thinking about it made him feel extremely vexed.
The young lady covered her mouth with her hand and yawned beautifully.
Just as she was about to fall asleep, Khaled finally made up his mind. I want to inherit Neb's helmet. This is my destiny. You're not asleep, are you? Khaled almost burst into tears. I made such a big life decision at such a crucial moment. Did you hear me? Sia was a deity. She regained her composure in less than a tenth of a second.
She smiled as if nothing had happened, indicating that she had been very clear-headed the whole time. She had relied on her adamantine drill and the lightning-speed electric drill to pierce through her skin.
Khaled still did not dare to argue with her. I abandoned the helmet. I don't know where it went. It's okay. The helmet is just a manifestation. It represents Neb's spirit. Now that Neb is still in your body, it means that the helmet is not lost. Thea was actually very sleepy. She forced herself to stay awake and explained to him. No matter what, she had to get some benefits from Nebraska, otherwise, it would be a waste of her effort. Is that so? Khaled's face was full of question marks. Thea wanted to go back and rest. It would be best to solve the current problem quickly. She reached out her spiritual power and negotiated with Neb in his body briefly before retreating. Mr. Khaled, the helmet has returned to Neb's resting place. You have to be firm in your belief to obtain all of Neb's power. Neb's things are all stored in a subspace. Let me bring you there.
After the young lady finished speaking, she did not ask for their opinion and teleported the three of them over in a sky-blue ripple.
The sky was gray and the ground was stiff. The surroundings were either strange rocks that looked like beasts or withered old trees that could make children cry.
The air was faintly discernible and there were howls of agony.
The few of them looked at their surroundings. Even Thea could not help but focus her attention. The intensity of the negative energy here was beyond her imagination. Did Neb lie to her? Was he actually a necromancer? In this place, if 100 corpses were buried, 70 to 80 skeleton soldiers would stand up the next day. The negative energy here was too strong. However, she quickly gave up on the idea. Not far from her line of sight, there was a tall tower that reached the sky. That was the only light in this world. It was the wizard tower that Neb had described. The Tower of Destiny.
The tower was surrounded by a dense power of order.
Using the wizard tower to suppress this space? Was there something extremely evil buried in this subspace? She pointed at the tower in the distance and gestured for them to follow. Halfway through, Khaled suddenly fell to the ground, causing the young lady to be shocked. His face was covered in dirt from the fall, and he got up.
Ignoring his sorry state, he shouted loudly, "The enemy of the sorcerers, the 1,000-year fate, the red apocalypse is coming."
Thea was stunned by his words.
This guy seemed to have some kind of prophecy ability.
A quarter of the modifications made him even more paranoid.
However, an enemy that he thought was unstoppable was not necessary in the eyes of the young lady.
However, after the incident with the spirits, Thea was much more cautious. Her 5 fingers that were as white as jade moved quickly and casually. A mysterious and indescribable magic circle was spread out. This subspace and the outside world were originally one, but it was later separated by people. All kinds of laws were applied. Thea consecutively arranged 3 protective magic circles and 2 spatial magic circles. This time, even the spirits would not be able to teleport her silently. These magic circles could at least buy her a few seconds. She was confident. After waiting for a few minutes, she was a little confused. There was no warning in her mind.
Then, there were only 2 possibilities. The enemy was far stronger than her, or the enemy was far weaker than her.
This was very awkward. The young lady felt that she was most likely a frightened bird.
How could there be so many people in the multiverse who were stronger than her, and who had nothing better to do than to stare at Earth 2 every day?
Divination could not predict her future, especially when she was a powerful god. She was in a dilemma and could only wait. Chapter 672. First, it was Khaled's warning, and then it was Sia's formation, as if she was facing a great enemy. The remaining Old Luo and Hawkgirl were influenced by the 2 of them. They each took out their weapons and were carefully on guard. Just when Thea was tired from waiting, a blood-red teleportation wave appeared in front of them. Thea laughed dryly and pointed at the red wave to Khaled. "Is this the enemy of 1,000 years that you warned us about?" Khaled sensed it and nodded. Thea cursed, "Weakling."
Amidst the blood-red energy fluctuations, a handsome man wearing a red cloak and dark green leather clothes walked out as if there was no one else around. He looked at Khaled with the help of his senses.
"Khaled bin Hussein, you shouldn't have come to Nabu's territory. The power of the greatest sorcerer is not a small fry like you?" The man was showing off proudly. When he saw Thea, he was stunned and could not continue. "Is this a human?"
The magical power was so turbulent that it was almost tangible.
Even if he was just standing there, waves of pure magical power were running automatically according to a special rhythm. His body was absorbing the magical power around him unconsciously. The handsome man felt that the magical power in his body was about to leave his body. He was so scared that he took a step back. "Why did you stop? Continue?" Missy looked at this guy curiously. To be honest, this guy was not weak. He was much stronger than Mr. E, Daddy Midnight, and the others on Earth.
In the Magic Legion of the New Creation Planet, there were only about 180 people who were stronger than him.
The handsome man's heart was in a mess. Could it be an illusion? That was his first reaction, but he quickly tossed that thought to the back of his mind. Nonsense.
The magical power in his body was about to go out of control.
Whose illusion could be so powerful? She was the embodiment of magical power. Is she really human? Even the strongest sorcerer Nabu he had ever seen could not compare to this woman. The handsome man felt his face was burning. The handsome man almost wanted to teleport and escape.
However, no matter how hard he tried, it was as if he had thrown his magic power into the void. He repeatedly exerted his strength as if he was constipated.
The teleportation that he used to be able to attack and retreat with ease could not be activated at all. At this point, he was completely convinced that this was not some kind of illusion. The other party's attainment in magic had already crushed his. The difference in their levels of understanding was too great. In fact, he had really wronged Thea. The young lady could indeed confine space. The reason why the handsome man was so terrified now was because Thea had already fixed the space here in order to guard against the enemy of 1,000 years that Khaled had mentioned. It was possible to teleport in, but what about leaving? Several advanced spells were being cast at the same time. Thea found it difficult to cast them herself. What's your name? What are you doing here?
Eldest young miss asked calmly. Although she was wearing casual clothes that did not match the empty and silent environment, the handsome man did not dare to ignore her. He bowed respectfully and said, "Master, I'm Votan. I'm here too." When it came to the purpose of his visit, he was a little hesitant.
He was here to intercept, but how could he say it without causing any misunderstandings? Fortunately, Thea helped him out. You have a conflict with this Neb?
The handsome man nodded immediately.
That's right. I thirsted for his knowledge and skills, but he defeated me.
Thea looked at him deeply, as if she had seen through him.
You're very persistent and passionate about knowledge. I won't make things difficult for you. You may leave. With that, eldest young miss stepped lightly on the ground with her left foot. An invisible wave spread out, and the confines of the teleportation were lifted.
The handsome man wanted to run, but the question that had been in his heart for 1,000 years made him hesitate for a moment. He gathered his courage and asked, "Master, can you please give me some pointers?"
Why? Why am I inferior to Neb? Thea felt that there were too few people with magic in this world.
It would be a pity if even one of them died, so she did not intend to make things difficult for him.
Now that she heard his question, she smiled. She sized up Votan with her electrifying eyes.
Your body is very normal, but your soul can no longer bear the burden.
You've thought of using magic to extend your life, right? You don't have to deny it. Many people have done so. It's just that your attainment has not reached that level, so you found another way to use magic to carry on your memory. Am I right?
The handsome man's face was ashen. It was not a good feeling to be seen through, but he still nodded.
Master, you're right.
Thea asked again, "Do you know why many masters in ancient times who had more magic power than you chose to die instead of using this method to extend their memory?" The handsome man vaguely knew the answer, but he still asked with a glimmer of hope, "Why?"
The soul can't bear such a huge amount of memory. You relied on the accumulation of several lifetimes to try to find the true mystery of magic. It's a good idea, but this is not the right path. Every time you reincarnate, the burden on your soul will double. Although your knowledge will increase, your affinity with magic will deteriorate because of your soul. This is your current problem. To prove her words, Thea pointed at the hawk girl. I've seen her in another universe. She has reincarnated 206 times, and her strength is weaker each time. There's a limit to a human's soul. Let's talk about your old acquaintance, Nabu. In some worlds, he eventually became a god, but in this world, he also chose to die, leaving only a simple remnant of his consciousness. It can be said that the Nabu of this time and space is dead. Do you understand? You're on the wrong path.
Thea's words were not only directed at Votan, but also at Khaled, who was behind her.
Let's go.
After saying that, she walked toward the distant tower with the bearing of a master. The few of them followed, leaving only the handsome man who looked dazed.
You've really seen me? I've been reincarnated more than 200 times?
The hawk girl saw that Missy had fooled the menacing enemy of 1,000 years, with a few words, and started to use honorifics.
Thea looked at her strangely. Yes, anything is possible in the multiverse. The few of them did not continue talking and walked forward slowly. Old Robert came to her side and whispered, "That guy is still following behind us." Thea had already noticed. Votan's heart was dead, and he did not know what to do. He was now following behind them in a daze. Thea shook her head, indicating that she did not need to care about him.
Most of her attention was already attracted by the giant tower in front of her, and an unimaginable power was suppressed here.
What kind of terrifying power was that? It was pure and true evil. Perhaps it shouldn't even be described as evil.
Evil was a little narrow in front of such great power.
Thea's mutated vision was filled with indescribable shadows.
Nabu used his own wizard tower and gathered at least half of the power of order in this world to suppress this shadow.
That's right. Thea felt that this was an insignificant shadow.
Perhaps it was the shadow that the original owner did not care about, and it had wandered into this world.
After that, it was accidentally discovered by Nabu.
This wizard, who had a bright future, gave up the chance to become a god and absorbed more than half of the power of order in this world to suppress the shadow. The result was that the power of order was out of balance, and the wasteland wolves took advantage of it.
The superheroes were defeated, and evil gained the upper hand. Thea felt that her guess was not far from the truth. But what was this shadow? In her opinion, it was not inferior to the specter she saw that day. It was even purer and of a higher level. Oh my God! Thea's heart was in turmoil. She almost screamed out loud.
The natives might not know, but she knew that there was a power that could compete with God.
A ferocious beast.
It was the most primitive shadow that existed before everything began.
Chapter 673.
What is she looking at?
Khaled asked his lover, the Eagle Girl.
The Eagle Girl did not know what Thea was looking at, but she pouted and pointed at Votan, who was handsome to the point of being a sissy, implying that this guy might know. The enemy of 1,000 years, because of Thea's suppression, seemed like nonsense now. Khaled did not know that after he put on the Nabu helmet, he would have a fierce fight with Votan. Now, one of them was confused and the other was anxious, standing side by side like brothers in distress.
Do you know what she is looking at?
They waited for another half an hour, and seeing that Thea had no intention of entering the tower and was just standing there in a daze, Khaled had to ask Votan. In his opinion, these people who played with magic were all mysterious. Maybe they knew something?
The cross-dresser Votan looked at him with contempt.
The power that he had been chasing for his whole life could be easily obtained by this guy, but with Thea present, he did not dare to say anything. He sneered. Master must be observing the secrets of this tower.
He looked around and saw that everyone's gazes were focused on him. He felt a little better. His knowledge was still useful.
In my research, many ancient wise mages recorded a divine tower filled with disharmony and chaos in their notes. In many ancient myths and legends, it has many names, such as the Land of Broken Souls, the Tower of Heaven, the Giant Stone Tower, the Mad Ark, and so on.
Some scholars also extracted a name from ancient literature, the Giant Beast. They did not know the meaning behind it, so they forcefully explained that it was a place where God suppressed evil. Votan laughed after saying that. God. He himself had been around longer than God had been around. Thea looked on coldly.
Votan's first few sentences were nonsense, only the last sentence was slightly related, but she was not prepared to explain the difference between this God and that God. She had been looking forward to this supreme power for a long time, and now was the time to take a look. Absorbing it was impossible. Even spirits made her tremble, not to mention the giant beast. Fortunately, this was only a trace of power left behind by the giant beast after it was projected into the material world, so she had to see it no matter what.
Let's go in and take a look. The young mistress had already seen through the structure of the mage tower. She pulled a few people, including Votan, into the mage tower. The square-shaped mage tower soared straight into the clouds, giving off an extraordinary aura. From the outside, it was already several hundred meters tall. Inside, it felt even more spacious. Passageways, courtyards, spiral staircases, pillars, all kinds of buildings seemed to have been casually built by a child. They were piled up in a way that defied the laws of physics. There was a spiral staircase on top of the pillar, and beside the staircase was a courtyard. At the bottom of the courtyard stood a stone statue. There were all kinds of grotesque and variegated sculptures. Even without looking at the symbols, Thea knew that these were her old friends in Egypt. For example, the eye symbol represented Horus. There were also some symbols, such as Seth, which symbolized change, and Mehit, which symbolized destruction. Many of the Egyptian gods had left their divine power here to suppress the pure and deep shadow. Thea felt very uncomfortable when she entered this place. The divine power here was repelling her. After sensing for a while, he pointed to the right and said to Khaled, "Follow this path and you will obtain Neb's power. Don't hesitate, don't be afraid, accept the gift. And I will help you block the enemy." As soon as her voice fell, a huge figure leaped lightly and landed in front of them. Its entire body was surrounded by black smoke, and one could faintly see some dark red muscles. It had a ram's head, bright red eyes, and huge sharp teeth. It was at least 10 meters long and 5 meters tall, and it was looking at them on all fours. Go! Thea shouted angrily, and a chain of light wrapped around the demon. The demon groaned, and corrosive saliva dripped to the ground, forming a few deep pits. Seeing that they still wanted to help, old Robert had already pulled out his arrow. Thea was speechless. This was the bad thing about being a hero of justice. Couldn't they see that she wanted to talk to this demon alone? "It can't hurt me. As long as you get the helmet, you will complete the mission. Go." The path ahead will be weightless, but if you follow the path, you will definitely reach the end. Thea's acting skills were on full display, and she finally managed to trick them into going to get the helmet. The demon struggled with all its might, and the chain kept breaking. Thea was anxious, but she could not break free from the chain no matter how hard she tried. As the demon roared, they followed her instructions to get the helmet. When they were completely out of sight, Thea's expression returned to normal.
She looked gloomily at the crossdresser, Wotan, who had not moved at all.
This handsome man's legs were a little weak in front of the demon. The young lady could easily deal with it, but it did not mean that he could do the same. However, he did not take a single step back.
There were smart people everywhere.
Thea was a little helpless. In fact, old Robert should have noticed something, but he wisely did not say anything.
This Wotan was also very smart.
Thea asked tentatively, "Aren't you afraid?" These words had a double meaning, and one could interpret them however they wanted. How could the handsome Wotan not be afraid? He was scared to death. At first, when he saw Thea struggling to maintain the chain, and the demon struggling as if the chain would break any second, he had some guesses, but he was not very sure. However, now that the few idlers had left, and the young lady's chain instantly tied the demon up like a kitten, how could he not know that there was a problem here?
"I can die in order to seek knowledge."
These words were said very firmly, with a spirit of sacrifice for the truth. Thea nodded. To be honest, she was a little unhappy. The moment she saw this demon, she knew that half of her plan had failed. The purest and deepest shadow that had drifted into this universe had been contaminated. Perhaps it was the chaos attracted by the power of order, or perhaps it was the various bad habits of humans, but this shadow had developed intelligence. It gave birth to this demon in the purest and deepest shadow. It seemed to have gained the ability to walk freely, but the power above the rules had been directly crippled. It could be said that it had nothing to do with the giant beasts. Although this demon's combat power was very high, Thea still felt that it was a pity. After mixing with this world's debris, it had lost its pureness, and its value had shrunk by tens of thousands of times. As for tracing it back to its origin, the young lady only thought about it. Even if she had the combat power of a ghost, she did not dare to trace the origin of this demon. Who knew what it would trace back to? She sighed. Facing Wotan's eyes that were filled with curiosity, she told him part of the truth. "If I'm not wrong, this guy is the giant beast described in your ancient books."
"I originally thought that it would be something else, but now..."
She then shook her head with a look of pity. Chapter 674. Wotan looked at the demon. He was not stupid. Something that could be valued by a mage of Thea's level must be extraordinary. However, he also knew that he was too far away from that level. There was no point in worrying about it. He wanted to ask Thea a few more questions about himself, but seeing how stubborn she was, did he have any other bargaining chips that could move her? He tried to recall all the information he knew about this mage tower. Which part of it mentioned the giant beast that this master valued? Suddenly, he slapped his head. "Master, there is a record that there was a room in this tower where this giant beast was locked up. If I'm not mistaken, it escaped from there." Wotan purposely raised his voice to emphasize that this was important information. In fact, he did not think that this information was that important. He just wanted to give it a try. However, when these words reached Thea's ears, they automatically had a new meaning. Perhaps there were still some remnants of the shadow in the room where this guy was born? Even if nothing was left, she would still be able to learn a lot from observing the traces left behind in the past. When the gods walked on the ground, they would leave behind miracles. For an existence like this giant beast, even if it was just a trace of its shadow, it would still leave behind a heavy mark in the material world. "What do you want?"
Milady knocked out the giant beast with a blow and asked the fake man with a calm gaze.
There was a hint of threat in her words, which made Wotan's heart beat faster. The consequences of asking for a sky-high price would be disastrous. After a slight hesitation, he told her what he wanted. "The memory continuation magic from back then is irreversible. Can you solve the problem of my body? I don't want to sink into this state again and again." Thea looked at him coldly. Wotan was afraid that she would turn hostile, but he was also afraid that she would say that she could not do it. After what seemed like a long time, Thea nodded slightly. "Your magic is nothing. I can help you remove it. In this life, I will split your soul and let you choose what memory you want to carry into the next life. If there are no problems, lead the way." It was not difficult for her. To her, splitting the soul was just a matter of slashing with the holy sword. However, to Wotan, it was tantamount to giving him a new life. He led the way like a lackey. Thea thought for a moment and decided that it was best to keep this demon alive. She shook the chain and brought the giant demon with her as if it was a dead dog. The two of them walked and stopped. Wotan was under a lot of pressure. According to the description in the book, he repeatedly checked the road signs, afraid that if he walked into a dead end, the person behind him would tie him together with the demonic behemoth in a rage. When he pushed open a stone door, Wotan was distracted and did not see what was behind the door. He stepped out and saw nothing. Just as he was about to save himself, Thea pulled him back. Just as he was about to thank this big shot, Thea covered her mouth at first, then laughed heartily. Ha ha! His voice was loud and clear, as if he had discovered a rare treasure. The young mistress laughed so hard that Wotan almost fainted. Come on, those who laughed and prepared to kill after discovering the treasure were all villains. You're a hero, right? You dare to deprive us villains of our patent? Thea did not have the time to care about his little thoughts. She had been a little disappointed at first, but the result was better than she had expected. The self-consciousness in the shadow of the demonic behemoth had become the demonic behemoth, which meant that the void in front of her that could absorb all light had no consciousness. Although she could not absorb it directly, she had no problem learning it through simulation. God was righteous, and the demonic behemoth was evil? She did not see it that way. That kind of big shot had long surpassed the definition of good and evil. It was more appropriate to describe the Heavenly Father and dark side as righteous and evil, but it was nonsense to describe the other two big shots. She could feel that she had gained a lot of knowledge just by looking at the void in front of her. This knowledge was beyond the limits of what words could describe. It represented the power to create a world. She resisted the temptation and stopped looking. There were too many idle people in the tower, and it was not suitable for her to study it. She did not intend to be courteous with such an unparalleled treasure buried in the tower. After all, she had reconciled the conflict between Nabu and Khalid. He probably would not mind if she changed the name of the Tower Master to herself. Thea was surrounded by indescribable joy, and Wotan could not help but take a few more glances. What did this master gain? Why is she so happy? He turned to look at the void, but he did not gain anything. However, he also knew that this thing was not meant for him. It was better to grab what he deserved. He looked at Thea pitifully. Please don't go back on your words. The goddess of trade naturally would not take advantage of him. She pulled him directly out of the tower. She reached out and took out a light blue substance from the depths of his soul. This was the memory continuation magic that he cast on himself in his first life. She closed her fingers and crushed it lightly. She then took out the holy sword and slashed it a few times. Before Wotan could understand what was going on, she had already finished. I'll split 2 souls for you. You can store all the necessary knowledge in 1 soul. The other 2 souls will dissipate automatically after 3 days. Splitting souls was not much more difficult for her than partitioning a hard disk. She explained the memory transfer method again. Thea thought about it and felt that the benefits she gained this time were simply too great. The guy who led the way had contributed a lot. She only slashed a few times, which seemed a little perfunctory. She scanned the tower with her spiritual power and searched for a moment. She then flew back with a small ball of spiritual power. Since you are looking forward to Nabu's knowledge, I will fulfill this wish for you. After Khalid dies of old age, you will become the new owner of Nabu's helmet. I will stay in this universe for a few more days. I may need you later, or I may not. That's it. She then handed the ball of spiritual power that represented Nabu to Wotan. She then opened the door and threw him out of the subspace. After chasing away the irrelevant people, she began to collect the tower. Although the Tower Master was Nabu, so what? If the goddess of wealth wanted to give him benefits, he could not refuse. It was not the first time that she forced people to buy and sell. She did not have any psychological burden at all. However, this time she did not use a single copper coin to buy the tower. Didn't you, Nabu, value your successor? I will give you a few spells. After all, knowledge is priceless. She transferred a few powerful spells from the Egyptian gods to the tower. It was meaningless for the tower to keep these spells, so they were naturally transferred to Nabu's helmet. A simple transaction was completed. She did not plan to move the tower. After all, the tower still carried half of the power of order from Earth. Whether it was to suppress the shadow or to stabilize it, it was not suitable to be moved. If Thea wanted to study it in the future, she could come to this subspace. What? What if Dr. Fate did not have the Tower of Fate? She did not care about that. Moreover, she felt that Khalid Hussein might not realize that the tower originally belonged to him. The reality was not far from what she expected. Khalid put on a fully enclosed helmet. When he came out again, he did not know that the tower was given to him. The three of them met up with Sia. At that time, she was meditating outside with her eyes closed about the knowledge she had just learned. The mysterious knowledge was intoxicating, and she only woke up when old Luo called her twice. There were a lot of things to do in the outside world. It was not a good time to think about it. She took them back to New Orleans. She used simple magic to exchange a few moves with Khalid, who now called himself Doctor of Fate. There were many hidden dangers in this kind of power transfer. His state of mind was unstable, arrogant, and his magic power was extremely crude. He thought that the heavens were his number two. Sia gave him a solid beating, and only then did he realize that he was still a mortal, not a god. Nabu only gave you magic and experience. You still have a long way to go before you can use his knowledge freely, Mr. Khalid. Khalid, who was wearing a metal helmet, kept insisting that they call him Doctor of Fate. He wanted to separate the two identities. Thea was not going to tolerate his bad habit. You even forgot your own name? I have to teach you a lesson for your true master. After a round of beating, Khalid Hussein finally remembered his name. He was no longer so stubborn about others calling him Doctor of Fate. Leaving Hawkgirl to help Khalid familiarize himself with his new ability, Thea took old Robert back to the Batcave. Looking at Psyker, Caitlin had a strange expression. After asking, she found out that Barry Allen had picked up a handsome guy when he installed the Intercept node. Chapter 675. Jay Garrick, a very energetic young man. At the same time, he was also the fastest person in this world. His speed came from an old acquaintance, the Greek god Hermes. The Hermes here had the power of speed and was also a good god. He was seriously injured in the battle with the Great Plains wolf, and before he died, he passed his power of speed to Jay Garrick, who was passing by. Barry met his peers when he was running. After that, in order to strengthen the power of justice, he brought him back. A slightly large silver helmet that looked like a pot lid was placed on his head. There were two golden wings on both sides of the helmet. He was wearing a red tights and there was a huge yellow lightning bolt drawn on his chest. At this moment, Jay Garrick still couldn't fully understand his own ability. Barry was explaining it to him out of kindness. This guy? Thea's gaze was a little strange. She remembered that Jay Garrick was a sock puppet of extreme speed. However, in order to separate from his original body, of course in Thea's opinion, it was most likely that he was confused by drugs. Extreme speed created a time remnant to pretend to be Jay Garrick. After that, he realized that he could not control the other party and killed the time remnant in the end. Thea's evaluation of extreme speed was that he was sick and had a hole in his head. But here came the question. Was there a problem with this Jay Garrick in front of her? After looking carefully for a long time, she did not see any problems. Whether it was the body or the soul, it was the same on the surface. This was a superhero who was willing to sacrifice for justice. The young mistress could only say that she did not know how to differentiate between the original body and the time remnant. If this guy was harmless, then let him be. Green Lantern Alan Scott, Flash Jay Garrick, and Eagle Girl Kendra Sanders. These were the new big three of Earth 2 after the sacrifice of Superman, Batman, and Wonder Woman. It had to be said that Nebra had taken away half of the world's power of order. These new heroes were too weak. Earth was fine for now. It was time for her to go back and mobilize the army. After greeting Old Bat, she directly opened the sonic tunnel and returned to the new creation planet. Your Majesty, the Great Plains wolf is rampaging in that universe. Please allow me to lead the army to eliminate him. Thea went directly to see the Heavenly Father. She bowed slightly and directly explained her purpose of coming. Great Plains wolf? Father, I'm willing to lead your guards into battle. The Heavenly Father didn't say anything, but the second-generation new god, Olion, couldn't help but ask to join the battle. Olion was Darkseid's son, and the Wasteland Wolf was Darkseid's uncle. The two of them were very close by blood. However, Olion had no intention of letting him go because the Great Plains Wolf's ability to attract hatred was superb. A long time ago, he had killed the Heavenly Father's wife, Avia. This caused Olion, who had always regarded the Heavenly Father as his own father, to be heartbroken. If there was a chance, even if he had to perish together with it, he would kill the Great Plains wolf. But the Heavenly Father was clearly thinking more. Thea, we shouldn't interfere too much with the matters of that universe. The time for the final battle between good and evil has yet to arrive.
But the Great Plains wolf. Speaking of this great hatred of killing his wife, even the usually dignified and solemn Heavenly Father had a slight hesitation.
How could he not care? We'll mobilize an army to defeat the enemy. If we can kill the Great Plains wolf, we'll kill him. In the end, the Heavenly Father still couldn't control his emotions. Thea immediately nodded. This was similar to how the spirit had told her not to directly participate in the battle between mortals.
Perhaps the Heavenly Father and Uncle Da had some kind of connection with the higher-ups?
Soon, the new gods of the new creation planet were gathered. When they heard that they were going to kill the Great Plains wolf, they were all excited. They weren't fools. No one would easily give up on avenging their boss. Other than Thea's magic army, the other 3 army commanders all asked to join the battle. The Heavenly Father's General of Love, Wuja, even took out his sledgehammer and waved it on the spot. He couldn't wait to fight the Great Plains wolf for 500 rounds.
The Heavenly Father was very pleased.
Everyone treated his hatred as a collective hatred. What did this mean about him? It meant that he had done a good job of working together. But if all 4 armies were to be deployed, it would be no different from a final battle. The Heavenly Father turned to ask Mitron. The god of knowledge, who sat in his chair and flew around every day, had dealings with both sides. He would answer anyone who asked him a question, but generally speaking, he still spent more time with the Heavenly Father. How many troops from the Apocalypse Star have been mobilized? The Great Plains wolf's direct subordinates have all been mobilized. Desard has also been mobilized. Mitron answered all the questions without any intention of hiding anything. The Heavenly Father fell silent. He knew his old rival too well. Mitron wanted to test the waters before the official battle. Darkseid had sent out his left and right hands, and the Heavenly Father couldn't show any weakness. But in order to have a backup plan, he wouldn't send out all his elites. "O Lion, take my guards and Goddess Thea's magic army." The 2 gods bowed and walked out of the door together. Thea's army had already gathered at the first moment, and the Heavenly Father's guards were the best of the best. It looked like each of them was holding a spear, but in fact, it wasn't just a melee weapon. They could also shoot lasers. "Becca, how are the preparations?" Thea asked her assistant. The blonde lady, Becca, was a demigod who was proficient in both magic and martial arts. She would become Orion's wife in the future, and even now, she had shown extraordinary leadership skills. Thea's clone on the planet of creation was only in charge of the general direction, and almost all the details were handled by Becca. "Commander, we can set off at any time," Becca replied with a dignified aura. Thea sized up her subordinates. After more than a year, the magic army's size was still maintained at 1,000,000, but the quality was much higher than before.
They had a staff in each hand and a robe in the other.
100 captains, all armed to the teeth, had rings that amplified magic power, necklaces that enhanced energy, robes that were embroidered with the sun, moon, and stars, and staffs that could shorten the chanting of spells. All this equipment had been created by Thea's clone and the god of blacksmithing, Hay-8, over half a year. It could be said that the strength of these 100 people was similar to that of the trap, Voton. Any one of them could take over a planet and dominate it. They could be said to be the small group of people who had the highest affinity with magic among the hundreds of millions of people in the new god race. More than 10 of them could successfully cast a high-level spell like Time Stop. Although they weren't as proficient as Thea, and still required a large amount of chanting, hand gestures, and casting materials, it was already very rare. The rest of the captains were also mid-level mages, and could be said to be the supporting force of the army. The large group quickly arrived at the square in an orderly manner. The Heavenly Father's guards led by Olion had already been there for a while, and the second generation of the gods was very polite and signaled Thea to take command. "Our goal this time is only one, and that is to take the head of the Great Plains wolf. To avenge the Heavenly Queen." Thea explained the mission concisely. Chapter 676. Hearing that they were going to kill the Great Plains wolves, not only did her magic army start to get excited, even the Heavenly Father's personal guards led by Olion could not control their emotions. They originally thought that it was just a daily killing, but they never thought that it would be such a glorious mission. Revenge for Queen Avia. That was everyone's thought. The members of the magic army all ran back home. They wanted to take out their best equipment to fight the Great Plains wolves. Gem magic was convenient and fast, saving time and energy. This magic was fully developed in the hands of Missy. She would then bring it to the magic army. Mage Sargon would probably be able to rest in peace. Now, all kinds of rare gems had become a strategic resource for the magic army, on the same level as adamantine and mithril. Once they engaged in battle with the enemy, tens of thousands of gems would be thrown out. The scene would be spectacular and magnificent. It was completely indescribable. Low-level mages who threw out gems that sealed high-level magic in battle could basically turn the tide of the battle. Now that they heard that they were going to fight the Great Plains wolves, everyone took out their treasures and swore to give the enemy a good beating. It took some time to regroup. Boiling blood was not enough to describe the fanaticism of this group of people. Many of the soldiers only hated themselves for not learning more magic and practicing more martial arts. Justice will prevail. The young miss shouted a few slogans before activating the sonic boom channel to head to Earth 2. The Orange Tunnel was opened for a whole day before the large army was sent over. The Great Plains Wolves troops were also deployed. Thea glanced over and was a little sad. The enemy had gathered all their troops in what was supposed to be the metropolis. The originally prosperous city, the City of Hope, was completely dead. The metropolis of this time and space suffered a devastating blow the moment the Great Plains Wolves descended. Louise Ryan died. Jimmy Olsen died. There was no Baldy Luther in this time and space, but Lena Luthor also died in this land. Superman, who once brought hope to the people, became a different kind of creature. He became one of the countless monsters that he destroyed in his lifetime. Fear, hesitation, trembling, all sorts of negative emotions surrounded this world, surrounding everyone. This world should not be so lonely. If there is no hope, then I will give you hope. Light blue, water blue, light blue. Her body emitted a faint blue light at first. As her faith grew stronger, the color of the light became darker. The light of hope. Thea only felt that her heart was calm. She never thought that in this universe, in this land of annihilation that had already been half destroyed by evil, the world will would actually help her ignite the flame of hope. He had thought that anger would be the third emotion he had mastered, but he had not expected that hope would be the first emotion he had mastered. The will of the world was begging her to save this land and save the intelligent life here. Thea agreed without any hesitation. Her mission was to eradicate evil and bring new hope to this land. The feeling of hope inspired all the righteous people. Olion and Becca did not know what Sia had done, but their beliefs were firm, and their combat power was rising. This was not fake. The remaining soldiers were even more affected. They felt as if their bodies were filled with energy, and the combat power of the entire army seemed to have increased by 20%. This was the power of hope. We should charge over while our morale is still high. Olion, the second-generation god, suggested excitedly as he felt the divine power in his body rising. Thea closed her eyes and felt the emotions of hope. She was not moved by his suggestion at all. Are you kidding me? This is a magic army, not a cavalry army. Do you think we are all Gandalf? Charge over with a sword and a staff? Damn. He secretly tagged Olion as he stared into the distance with rapt attention. A cold and vicious gaze met her eyes. It was the Wasteland Wolf, the god of hatred. This guy's strength had at least doubled since the last time they met, and he had personally come to Earth. Thea secretly estimated the strength of the two of them. She felt that the other party was stronger than her. After all, he was the younger brother of Yojia Khan and Darkseid's uncle. Even if he had not learned anything new, he had lived for so many years and should be stronger than her. However, now that the emotions of hope had gathered in her, it was hard to say who was stronger. At the same time, another guy with an evil aura entered her field of vision. He wore a red robe and seemed to feel Thea's gaze. He took off his hood and looked up. Disgusting. His face was cracked and distorted, and his exposed skin was green. His eyes were murderous. As if he felt Thea's scrutinizing gaze, he muttered some evil words and disappeared from Thea's field of vision. Oh, this guy was a magician. He was different from a traditional magician. He was more like a sorcerer or a warlock. He did not use the elements of earth, fire, water, or wind. Instead, he controlled the power of demons and hell. This was the fundamental difference between Thea and this guy. This was Darkseid's general, one of the members of the Dark Elite Guild, the god of pain, Dizzard,
who was in charge of the internal affairs of the Apocalypse planet. He was slightly weaker than the Great Plains wolf, but he had more tricks up his sleeve and was more difficult to deal with. Both sides had sent out 2 new gods, and each side chose an opponent. This was the inevitable outcome. Thea thought to herself. Should she deal with the Great Plains wolf and let the weaker Olion deal with Desaad? Or would it be warrior versus warrior, mage versus mage? Should he take care of Desaad first before going to support Olion? Of the 2 choices, one was safe and the other was radical. Thea did not rush to start the battle. Instead, she commanded the army to set up camp in Gotham to set up a temporary magic net, organize the equipment, and set up teleportation nodes. The mage army needed to do a lot of work in the early stages before they could unleash their full power. The mighty army descended from the sky. The citizens of Gotham who were still alive revealed themselves from the streets and alleys. They secretly observed this group of soldiers who were different from the current world. Tens of thousands of people would fill the mountains, not to mention 1 million. Dark robes, white staffs. The appearance of these magicians made the survivors feel like they were in a dream. Was this a movie? The new gods did not care about the feelings of these ordinary people. Thea began to set up a temporary magic net, and the group of people split up to take care of the camp. Ley line modification, windstorm, flame spell, disintegrate spell. Tall buildings were pushed down, dust was swept away, plants were burned, and trash was dissected. Becca was very experienced, and she methodically commanded the army to set up the camp. Her boyfriend Olion tried to talk to her a few times, but she coldly pushed him aside. Can't you see that I'm busy? Thea was also very busy. The magic net was indeed a powerful weapon, but the restrictions were too great. Even the Heavenly Father could not set up a magic net that covered the entire multiverse. This required them to set up a temporary magic net everywhere they went, and then connect the magic net of the new creator's planet. This work was dry and boring, and she was the only magic deity here. She could not slack off even if she wanted to. Eldest Miss was working helplessly when she accidentally heard someone calling her name not far away. She listened carefully and almost laughed out loud. Outside the camp, 2 old men were looking at them with binoculars. It was Old Bat and Old Green Arrow. Did you see her power just now? That holy light. How could she be your daughter? Old Bat did not know what the light of hope was. He only knew that when he looked at Thea, the pain that had troubled him for a long time seemed to be alleviated. Thea gave a few instructions to her adjutant, Becca, and she immediately brought people to invite the 2 old men into the camp. Chapter 677. Previously, Thea was dressed in casual clothes and looked like a fashionable girl. Now, in order to command the army, she naturally changed into the outfit of the new star of creation. She wore a colorful robe and a hood that covered her face. Her whole body was full of a mysterious aura. The 2 old men looked at each other. Was this person, who had her arms crossed and was mumbling to herself, really the same Thea from before? The difference was too big. Thea was racing against time to build the magic net. At this time, the Magic Legion was at its weakest. The new Protoss did not have the habit of sneak attacks, but it was hard to guarantee that the Wasteland Wolf and Desaad would take the wrong medicine and play a blitzkrieg. The work of the Magic Legion could not be slack, and the coordination work with Earth 2 also had to be done. Taking off the hood, the 2 old men were relieved when they saw the familiar face. How much combat power does Earth have? My Legion can only deal with the Wasteland Wolf. You have to be responsible for the human army under his control, Thea said lightly. About 200,000 troops will be dispatched. This is already the largest combat power of the World Military Committee. Several superheroes directly under the military will also participate in the battle. Being in the Magic Legion, Old Bat felt uncomfortable all over. He did not know that it was the powerful magic that was affecting his senses. To be honest, Thea was not optimistic about the few superpowered people controlled by the Earth Army. The Atom Man here could not shrink, but instead, he would become a big fool. In addition to looking fierce, he was completely a target. The rest of the Sandman team was a group of well-trained agents. What about Superman? Have you thought of how to deal with Superman? Thea threw out an earth-shattering question. Old Robert was a little surprised. Old Bat still had a poker face. He could see that he had thought about this problem. Can't you save Superman with your means? He is a hero of mankind and should not fall into darkness. Thea still glanced at him and shook her head gently. I don't want this to happen, but according to my observation, the Superman you know is dead. His soul has dissipated, and now the one occupying that body is an evil guy. There is also a Superman in your world, so you should know that he is an alien, right?
Kryptonian, I know. We have a Kryptonian here. Thea was stunned for a second by Old Bat's words. She almost collapsed the weave.
She hurriedly calmed herself down and asked doubtfully.
Who is it?
He calls himself Fal Zod.
The conversation between the two was very brief, but Thea was still shocked. She did not know much about Earth 2. She thought that the Kryptonian mentioned by the Old Bat was Kara, but she never expected that it was a Kryptonian she did not know. Listen to that last name, Zed. You and your father have such similar habits. You always have a backup plan, don't you? Hee hee. Can this Far Zod deal with Superman?
The Old Bat was silent for a while.
I am working hard to train him. He is our only hope. Thea glanced at Old Luo. Old Green Arrow had a confused look on his face. Clearly, he didn't know about this. The eldest miss still couldn't hold back her desire to ridicule him. You and your father both have the same problem. You're always on guard against this and that. You'll never reveal a single piece of information unless it's absolutely necessary, right? What a fine tradition.
The Old Bat did not seem to hear her sarcasm.
He even had a smile on his face.
It was as if he was proud of the fine tradition of the Wayne family. She could not say anything harsh to the Old Bat, who was not ashamed but proud of it.
Hey, give me a moment. Let me finish my work. Take me to see Fal Zod.
Also, Thea thought of something and said to the Old Bat, your body is overdrawing your life force.
Follow my adjutant to treat it. It's not possible to restore you to your original state, but you can at least recover some of your losses. An hour later, the Old Bat who had been treated led Thea to Arkham. Arkham in this dimension was also notorious.
Following the Old Bat through the tunnel, Sia finally saw Far Zod in a bedroom deep underground after going back and forth for 7 or 8 rounds.
F***CK. This guy is black. Originally, Thea thought that Zod and Fiora were together in this dimension. But looking at his skin color, Thea knew that it had nothing to do with Fiora. He had seen Batman before, but Thea was a stranger to him. Fal Zod seemed to be a little shy and took a step back. So weak. He is just an ordinary person. Thea looked at the old Batman. Why don't you let him bask in the sun? The old Bat was still expressionless. He doesn't like to fight. He has no will to fight at all. That's why I keep him here. A Kryptonian who doesn't like to fight? Or is he Zod's son? Thea could only respond to the malice of the world with a chuckle. Why are you so cowardly? Kryptonian, what is your initial gene mix type? Teacher? Artist? Scholar? The young lady's time was precious. Seeing a precious combat force being wasted because of her own reasons, she felt distressed. She did not care what the old Bat thought and asked directly in standard Kryptonian. The old Bat glanced at her indifferently and did not speak. The Kryptonian guy, who was not sophisticated at all, just stared blankly. Looking at his submissive temperament, Thea was angry. She seemed to understand the old Bat's intention. This was not a secret weapon. It was a last resort. She did not have much hope for this Kryptonian. The Magic Legion could not attack Superman, so she had to use the old method. Is there kryptonite in your universe? The old Bat and the black guy asked at the same time, what is kryptonite? Is that so? General Zod was not here. Earthlings had never come into contact with kryptonite at all. Thea took out a piece of kryptonite. Before she could do anything, the black guy fell to the ground with a thud. His face was full of pain. She handed the palm-sized kryptonite to the old Bat. You have seen how to use it. It can degrade Kryptonian cells. This is for you. Also, let this guy bask in the sun. We will start the general attack in 3 days. Thea then teleported away, leaving the old Bat staring at the black guy with the kryptonite in his hand. Perhaps the Wasteland Wolves did not intend to launch a sneak attack at all, or perhaps the two bosses liked to fight head-on. The Wasteland Wolves were stationed in the metropolis, while Thea was camped in Gotham. Both sides minded their own business and made their final preparations. This was not a game. The Magic Legion could not only use magic, but they could also deal with close combat. The robes of high-level mages were stronger than armor. Ordinary mages could not do that. They had to give up some magic, put on armor, and pick up weapons. The teams were assigned tasks according to their characteristics. They mastered several spells that targeted the Apocalypse Demon army. Thea was also making the final arrangements. In order to prevent Darkseid from interfering with the magic net, she set up a few more layers of insurance. Even if the Lord of Darkness came personally, they would be able to resist for a few minutes. The old bat said something to Zod. The Kryptonian, who was suspected to be trained as a scholar, finally walked out of the house and began to absorb the yellow energy of this world. The Earth Resistance Army was also marching to Gotham. The army that was also under the control of the Wasteland Wolves was also quickly gathering. The war seemed to be at hand. Thea left a clone in the outside world to deal with the chores.
Her real body had already entered the Tower of Fate to understand the pure shadow.
Unlike the kind grandmother, who was born as a commoner on planet Apocalypse, Thea relied on her own efforts to rise from an ordinary person to a new god. Chapter 678. No matter how weak the Wasteland Wolf was, he was still Yojia Khan's younger brother and Darkseid's uncle. He had a high starting point and had lived for a long time. The accumulation of divine power would be terrifying. Thea did not think that she could win against him. She still needed to make more preparations. Ordinary people could still learn a few more spells or sharpen their swords when they had nothing to do. She could not. She had already reached such a high level that it was almost impossible for her to take another step. Just look at the Wasteland Wolf, who has ascended to godhood for countless years, and now he is hiding in the basement and practicing hard with a big axe that he can't endure. It can be seen that he is not confident in dealing with Sia, who has ascended to godhood for less than 2 years, nor does he have a way to improve. After tens of thousands of years, Thea could only improve her skills and equipment. Other than that, she estimated that the increase in divine power was only about 10%. The laws of the world favored the gods but also restricted them. They were not allowed to grow without restraint.
Both the old and the new gods were within this framework.
However, the pure shadow gave her a chance. The laws could not restrict it. Thea came down to take a look whenever she had time. She did not make things difficult for the behemoth demon. She set up an endless loop of dreams. Go in and destroy everything. Just don't disturb me. What can I learn from it? Thea thought as she lay on her side. The shadow seemed to be transmitting some kind of profound theory, but she was confused when she tried to read it. This thing's level was too high. Her decoder's version was too low. She could not read it at all. That was the only way she could comfort herself. She did not know how to deal with this kind of power that did not follow the laws. There was a mountain of treasure in front of her, but she could only return empty-handed every time. The sense of loss made her feel frustrated. Fortunately, she was a casual person. She did not feel too depressed when she saw that she could not directly understand it. She started to use a roundabout strategy. She used the few laws she knew to compare them with the mysterious power of the shadow. The first thing she tried was naturally trade and wealth. The result was very touching. Sia felt that the two big bosses, God and Ferocious Beast, did not need trade, nor did they need wealth. There was no sign of her deity position and shadow working together. Next, the only thing she could use was the emotion spectrum. Without the help of the lantern ring, she had mastered 3.5 of the 7 emotions, which was considered a small accomplishment. Fear. Were the two big shots afraid? They could scare the parallax monsters with a single glance. Giving up on this? Pity? Thea smiled bitterly. She needed pity, but they didn't. Anger was an emotion that was only a small success. She didn't want to embarrass herself by using it. In the end, she used hope with some hope. She didn't know if it was the will of this world that gave her hope that opened a backdoor for her, or if it was the big boss that pitted her and gave her some hope. Yep, it was literally hope. When the blue light that represented hope came into contact with the shadow, Thea's ecstatic gaze finally changed a little. A deep and dark vision surrounded her. She was surrounded by a space that was as dark as ink. Her supervision was ineffective, and her mental power was ineffective. She tried to feel her surroundings with her hands. In the illusion, she felt like a long time had passed. When she woke up, she realized that she was back in the city. Where is this? Did something just teleport me? Based on her understanding of magic, she didn't think so. Her body didn't enter here. Was it her soul? Thea, come here. While she was in a daze, she heard someone calling her name.
She looked over and saw a young woman with a few freckles on her face waving at her.
She seemed to know her, but she couldn't remember her name.
Coming. Before she could answer, a girl wearing a dark blue jacket, a white shirt, a black tie, and a plaid pleated skirt quickly walked over. The freckled girl took out a small bag of indescribable items from her bag. The girl who had her back facing Thea quickly put them into her backpack and handed the freckled girl a small bundle of dollars.
Let me see my past? What's the point? Thea had already seen it.
The girl who had her back facing her had long brown hair and was wearing a school uniform. She walked with her head held high and looked indifferent.
Wasn't that her? She just didn't know which time and space Thea 1.0 was from.
Thanks to the many movies and TV series, many stories had this kind of plot.
As long as she followed this rebellious Thea, everything would come to light. Thea went to school as usual.
Looking at the younger version of herself wearing a school uniform and listening to the teacher in boredom, she felt like she was invisible.
The next day was ordinary.
No matter which time and space Thea was in, she seemed to be affected by the news of her father and brother's death. This Thea was in a daze for the whole day and played crazily after school.
Fortunately, Thea was strict and didn't do anything unsightly. What do I want to see? Thea had to ask herself this question. Of course, she didn't expect anyone to answer her.
If a man in black with the words, "Giant Beast," written on his forehead popped up, that would be terrifying.
Time flew by.
Thea was like a bystander, following the rebellious Thea 1.0 around every day like a shadow.
5 years passed in a flash.
When she followed the rebellious version of herself out of the door and saw a middle-aged man with gray hair in the distance, she finally confirmed that this was Thea from Earth 2, the poor guy who was stabbed to death by the evil Thea. The middle-aged man outside the door was old Robert, who had just returned from his studies. After that, time passed even faster. Old Robert continued to fight criminals and launched a war of revenge against Malcolm. What he didn't know was that when he and Malcolm fought and killed Moira by mistake, the rebellious Thea had been watching not far away. After witnessing this tragedy in a short period of time, and learning about her past from Moira's confession before her death, the rebellious Thea suddenly collapsed. Old Robert still treated her as his own daughter, but the rebellious Thea couldn't bear this deep affection. After 2 years of awkwardness, just before the knot between father and daughter was about to be untied, a sharp sword as black as ink with blood-red runes drawn on it killed her. This was the first time that Thea had seen the dark version of herself. He had pitch-black armor and a cold gaze. If the image of her sacred sword was that of a certain Toria, then this guy was the dark version of my king. It seemed that she might not be able to defeat her. The dark version was definitely not a god.
There was no doubt about it.
However, Thea felt that her power was somewhat similar to that of a ghost. They both had the ability to manipulate the rules and rewrite the rules at will.
The other party didn't pursue things like divine power and godhood. Instead, she went to an even more terrifying state.
After eliminating a few impossible options and combining various plots, Thea had a rough guess.
Eclipse.
This dark version of her was possessed by Eclipse.
Chapter 679.
Tion Shur was Spectre's predecessor. He was also God's vengeful spirit, but he was later sealed in the heart of darkness. This was something that very few ordinary people could come into contact with God's power when they were still young.
It was easy to use.
After finding the heart of darkness, the process was automatic. As for whether the person who possessed the heart of darkness or Tion Shur, she didn't know. Other than that, Thea really couldn't imagine that an ordinary person who didn't understand the plot could reach a place higher and further than her.
She laughed self-deprecatingly. How ironic.
She was on the side of justice, trying to understand the shadow of the giant beast to fight against the dark version of herself who had obtained God's power. The dark version of herself came and went quickly. She glanced at old Robert, who was shooting arrows crazily, and stepped out of a light screen, disappearing on the spot.
Thea also felt that this kind of teleportation was familiar. Spectre teleported her like this too.
Old Robert hugged Thea's body with tears streaming down his face and soon fainted.
Thea couldn't do anything now. Everything had already happened. She was just a spectator. She vaguely understood some things, but she still needed to verify it.
Old Robert was a good person. A light blue, almost transparent figure appeared beside her. Thea felt a little bit of the power of hope from it, but more of a completely unfamiliar power.
The light blue figure showed a gentle smile. Let's get to know each other. I'm Thea Quinn.
Thea had a strange expression. She shook hands with her other soul. The other soul could actually see her. I was too stubborn and ignorant before. I let old Robert down.
Right, There's a voice in the dark telling me that you're also Thea Quinn. How is that possible? Is it just the same name? The light blue figure seemed to be very talkative. Even though she just died, she wasn't too sad. She chatted with Thea curiously. Not only do we have the same name.
My father is Robert, my mother is Moira, and my brother is Oliver. The difference between us is just a little bit of coincidence. Seeing that Thea didn't believe her, she tapped on her soul and transmitted a part of her memory. With a little modification, she accidentally found out about her past, joined a company, learned martial arts, and so on.
She showed it all to Thea.
Oh my God! I never knew I had this kind of orientation, and you're with Wonder Woman. Thea patted her shoulder and said excitedly. Her focus was obviously different from the others. She was only interested in the battles at the beginning, and she only became interested when they arrived at Paradise Island.
This made Thea speechless.
This funny and gossipy person was definitely not her. However, seeing that she was laughing happily, the eldest young miss was also happy. The two women who had 70 to 80 points of beauty were laughing cheerfully like two fools.
Interesting. Your life is really wonderful. I admire you very much.
The soul Thea looked at her happily, her eyes flashing with hope.
It's a pity that I'm already dead.
Thea Quinn from another time and space. Carry on bravely with this brilliance and your perseverance.
Soul Thea said quietly.
A few more figures appeared behind her. The gloomy Malcolm, Oliver who was still a playboy, Moira who was full of concern, and the few relatives who had passed away in this world were all silently looking at her. You're also our daughter, little sister. Our path has come to an end, but your world is still very far away. Carry on our expectations and live a wonderful life for us. The few souls had different expressions, but the concern in their eyes could not be faked. Thea, who was also a soul, did not know how to respond. Her usually quick-witted mind seemed to have stiffened. If she had a body now, she was afraid that she would cry. She calmed herself down and nodded firmly at the few souls.
I will. I must reach the highest peak.
Although you are not the few people I know, I will carry on your wishes. The few souls hugged her one by one, and turned into nothingness under her gaze. Take care of old Robert for me, please.
She hugged Thea tightly.
The other party whispered softly in her ear, and then disappeared completely.
Was it sad?
Actually, it was not very sad. The eldest young miss was very clear that if she invested too much emotion in this world, it would be unfair to her relatives in her own time and space. To a certain extent, the living could not be compared to the dead. But for her to smile indifferently, she really could not do it. Looking at old Robert who had fainted not far away beside the rebellious Thea's corpse, she seemed to be saying to the air, but also to herself,
I will take good care of him. Don't worry.
The illusory world began to return to its original color. Thea's consciousness returned to her body and found that she was still in a reclining position. The shadow still seemed to be eternal, quietly hovering in front of her eyes. There was an additional power in her body. Although the attributes were different, Thea immediately recognized this familiar power. It was the source. A newly born source that needed to be nurtured slowly. Unlike Diana, the long-legged goddess divine power mainly came from the blessings of the Greek gods. She only had the part that she was born with as the daughter of Zeus, so her nurturing process would be very slow and time-consuming. Thea was a god herself. Her divine power had been purified several times, and it completely belonged to her. Although the divine power of trade and wealth did not completely match the new source, since this source had found her, it meant that there must be something in common. Thea patiently communicated with each other and tried to pour divine power into the source to complete the nurturing process as soon as possible. The conversion rate was not high, which meant that it had something to do with her original godhood. But the connection was not big. Optimistically, it would take a month to completely fuse. At first, Thea thought that this new source was related to the original godhood through language deception, but she soon discovered that this was not the case. This new source was grander and deeper into the laws. And according to the common understanding, it was not very bright. Without staying in the subspace for too long, Thea returned to Earth 2 and focused on deciphering the new source. After spending an entire day, the new source had grown by less than 5%, but her godhood was already foreseeable. When the results came out, she was a little stunned. Her talent tree seemed to be a little crooked. The name of this source was Soul. The connection between soul and the trade of wealth was not big, but forcefully deciphering it could be somewhat related. Thea felt that this was because she had observed the shadow of the ferocious beast. The entire world had helped Thea with the help of Soul. To be honest, Soul was definitely not bright, but it was definitely not evil. It was very much in line with her path of neutrality. The depth of the soul determined that this origin energy was equivalent to 2 or 3 times that of a normal origin energy source. Once he absorbed all of it, he would have no problem beating the Great Plains wolf. Perhaps by then, he would be the 3rd most powerful being under Darkside. However, nurturing the new source would take some time. After that, she would still need to familiarize herself with it. It was impossible to fight in 3 days. Delaying it to a month was imperative. Chapter 680. How could she drag this out for a month? Thea's beautiful eyes darted around. Putting up a truce sign was definitely not going to work. Putting aside the problem of morale, the Great Plains wolf who was hiding in the basement practicing his axe would not agree to it either. Both sides were ready to fight to their heart's content. No one would be able to accept it if the date of the battle was delayed by a month. She had to find a reason that both sides could accept. Thea scratched her head and started thinking. However, it was useless. She could not pretend to be sick or slack off on purpose. After all, there were still 2 big shots in the outer realm watching her. It was useless to fool these people in front of her. What should she do? She had wanted to finish the battle as soon as possible, but now she wanted to drag it out. Life was unpredictable. Suddenly, a thought entered her mind. It was not her own thought, but an external thought. Or rather, it was a vague thought given to her by the world's will. Is it because I have the divine position of the soul that the world's will, which is a collection of souls, responded to me? She immersed herself in it and tried to listen to the information that the world was transmitting to her. It was very messy. The world's will was not completely made up of souls. Her understanding of the divine position of the soul was also very shallow, so she could only read a small part of it. However, Thea knew that the clue she needed was on this planet, and it was not far from her. Could someone help her attract the attention of the 2 big shots above? Thea did not think that there was such a talented person on Earth who could attract the attention of the Heavenly Father and Darkside. However, the worlds will seem to be very certain that such a person existed. She tried to search with her spiritual power and supervision. After searching for 5 minutes, she saw a man and a woman. She knew that the world's will was not lying to her. No wonder the shamans liked to ask the ancestral spirits. This was like the Baidu of the magic world. The spirits probably had nothing to do after they died, so they knew all kinds of gossip. Thea did not need to ask the ancestral spirits. She directly asked their leader, the world's will. The search range was larger, and the results were better. Looking at the man and woman hiding in her sight, she smiled happily. Although she did not know why they were hiding here, it was more than enough to buy her a month. She rubbed her smiling face to make herself look more anxious and serious. He ordered his men to summon Olian. The god's 2nd generation arrived very quickly. Although he was the adopted son of the Heavenly Father, his status was not as high as Thea's, the Legion commander. He bowed slightly and respectfully saluted. Your Excellency, are we going to start the war in advance? I'm ready. Olian said excitedly. Thea could not help but raise her eyebrows. If this battle maniac knew that she was trying to stall for time, he would definitely explode. Fortunately, she had found a good reason. She pretended to be very careful and cautious as she gestured for Olian to calm down. Then, she stretched out her hand and used a water mirror spell to show Olian the man and woman that she had found as scapegoats. Scott and Barda? Them? They're in this universe? Olian looked at the man and woman on the screen, as well as Thea's poker face, and he was completely stunned. Red tights, a yellow mask, and a green cape. The color combination was as ugly as it could be. This was the god of concealment, Scott Free. He would become a superhero in the future, and his code name was Mr. Miracle. However, in the eyes of the new gods, this code name was dispensable because he was the biological son of the Heavenly Father. Back then, the Heavenly Father and Darkside had swapped their sons and formed an alliance. The Heavenly Father took Olian away, while Darkside took Scott away. Uncle Da did not have the loving nature of the Heavenly Father. He took Scott back and tortured him for a long time. As the son of the Heavenly Father, Scott did not fall into the darkness. Instead, he worked hard and ran away from the Apocalypse Star. Not only did he run away, but he also kidnapped his kind grandmother, the captain of the Nemesis team, the woman named Barda, to run away with him. The image that Thea showed Olion was the image of the two of them hiding in the middle of America. We have to rescue him. Olion really treated the Heavenly Father as his biological father. He did not have any thoughts of being abandoned by his adoptive father when his biological son came back.
That's right, Olion. You're right.
This mission is very difficult.
I can't act rashly. Immediately bring people to rescue Scott.
If necessary, we can give up on this battle and escort Scott back to the new planet of creation first,
Thea said resolutely. This touched Olion.
Retreating without a fight in the face of the Great Plains wolf was sacrificing Thea's reputation and prestige in the army. She was so loyal to the Heavenly Father.
He could not back down.
Immediately, under Thea's anxious gaze, he brought a dozen trusted subordinates to look for Scott.
Scott was not so easy to find.
This guy was the god of concealment, the #1 escape expert in the world.
His talents in concealment were probably maxed out.
If not for the world's consciousness tipping them off, Thea would not have realized that there was a new god on this planet. From this, it could be seen how good his concealment skills were. And from the looks of it, he only wanted to be with Big Barda and most likely did not want to return to the new planet of creation.
But that had nothing to do with Thea. She just needed to buy some time.
Seeing Olion rush out, she did not let go of the Great Plains wolf. She sent a message to Votan, the trap, and asked him to hypnotize an ordinary person and leave the image of Scott and Big Barda in the person's mind. Then, they would pretend to be coincidental and be captured by Desard. Knowing that the traitor of the Apocalypse Star was on this planet, the Great Plains wolf and Desard were overjoyed. Capturing the Heavenly Father's son and dealing with the traitor was more meritorious than destroying a universe. As Darkseid's right-hand men, the two of them knew their boss's preferences too well. Destroying a universe was a matter of course. Capturing the traitor was a great achievement. The two of them had a fierce argument about this. In the end, the god of pain's great warlock, Desard, suppressed him on the grounds that Thea did not make a move and the Great Plains wolf should not make a move either. He brought his trusted subordinates to capture Scott. The next few days were bustling with activity. They did not know how they were exposed, but Scott and his wife began to flee. They joined forces with Olion twice to repel Desard. But when Olion turned his head and wanted to catch up with his brother, he found that Scott had run away again.
He had no choice but to continue chasing.
The three groups of people fled from North America to South America and then to Europe. Along the way, Thea and the Great Plains wolf added more troops to participate in the marathon of the new Protoss race. At the same time, they tacitly restrained